With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hey, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. Coming up on today's show, police in Brussels are attempting to shut down the National Conservatism Conference, gagging Nigel Farage, Suella Braverman and Viktor Orban. We'll be live from the venue for a frontline account, speaking to a Flemish MEP there who saw the clampdown. And a London headmistress who has won the right to ban a Muslim pupil from praying has called the High Court's ruling a victory for all schools. Will we finally see an end to religious extremists meddling with British schools? And today, the government faces yet another revolt over its plan to ban teenagers from smoking for life. Is this latest clampdown sensible or a slippery slope to Puritanism? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. So it's bedlam in Brussels as the mayor of the city of Brussels sends in the police to clamp down on the National Conservatism Conference. I was an MEP in Brussels. I worked in Brussels, and I, for one, am not remotely surprised. This is what they do. It's the game they play. We'll look at the choice behind that, the decision behind that, and in a moment's time, I'll speak to a Flemish MEP who was actually there for his take. Was this a fair and appropriate use of power by a mayor who said the far right are not welcome? Or was this a sinister use of authoritarianism in Brussels? Don't forget, the home of free speech, they claim, the European Court of Human Rights there, but is in Strasbourg. Tight-lipped on this one. Isn't that funny? Get in touch. What do you make of this? In Brussels, send your views, and you can post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/you'll say. Get in touch. You'll see my mush there. But before all of that, it's time for your latest news headlines.
Martin, thank you. The top stories this hour. First, to the latest developments from Brussels this afternoon. Government sources have told GB News the attempt to shut down the National Conservatism Conference is a concern for free speech. Nigel Farage was in the middle of a speech when he heard the news.
I understand the police are very, very keen to close this down. So if they're going to close it down, they can close it down with me on stage, can't they?
The event had already changed venue 3 times after public pressure and previous attempts to close it down. If you're watching on television, footage here shows police officers entering the venue earlier this afternoon. It's understood the order came from local Brussels Mayor Emir Kerr in a move he said was to guarantee public safety. It followed a post he made on social media saying the far right is not welcome. Organisers say the event will continue for as long as it can, but delegates have been encouraged not to leave because police will not let them back in. Nigel Farage described the action as modern-day communism.
The police are outside the door as I speak. They will not let anybody else in. There are 3 police there. They have an order to close down this event, and when more police gather, that's exactly what they'll do. No alternative opinion allowed. This is the updated new form of communism. And you know what? If anything ever made me think that Brexit was the right thing to do, it's the events here in Brussels today.
Labour's Jonathan Ashworth questions whether some of the speakers should have been in Brussels to begin with.
I think some of the speakers, from what I understand, who have been advertised on the website for this conference, have very unsavoury views. I'm rather surprised that Suella Braverman's been allowed to go and speak at this event. Why is Rishi Sunak not getting a grip of this situation? Why is he not asking Suella Braverman to pull out of this event? Because some of the characters involved, at least according to their website, have made all kinds of comments which I don't think the Rishi Sunak's Tory party would want to associate themselves with.
In other news, Policing Minister Chris Philp says new powers for chief constables to sack rogue officers will root out those unfit to wear the badge. Under the new powers, chief constables will be put in charge of misconduct hearings, making it easier to remove officers in their own force who are found guilty. The changes, which come into force on the 7th of May, follow a review into police dismissals after the conviction of David Carrick for multiple sexual offences while serving as a police officer. A High Court ruling dismissing a Muslim student's challenge against her school's prayer ban has been described as a victory for all schools. The student argued the policy at Michaela Community School was discriminatory and breached her right to religious freedom. However, the head teacher of the school said schools should not be forced to change their approach simply because a child or parent decide they don't like something. The judge upheld the school's position, highlighting safety concerns. Despite the ruling, the students' legal team expressed their disappointment, saying it's important to promote religious freedoms in educational settings. Health Secretary Victoria Atkins has denied that a ban on tobacco and vape sales will cause a black market boom. That is, MPs are currently debating whether to bring in new smoking laws that would stop young people in England from ever smoking. If you're watching on television, here's a look inside the House of Commons currently, where the tobacco and vapes bill is being brought before MPs for the very first time. If it becomes law, it would be an offence to sell tobacco products to anyone born after the 1st of January 2009. It means children aged 15 or younger today will never legally be able to buy a cigarette. The bill is expected to pass, with Labour saying it'll back the legislation. Liberal Democrats leader Sir Ed Davey also backs it.
I've been convinced by the health arguments. Tobacco smoking is the largest preventable cause of death in our country. And having lost both my parents to cancer as a child, my father died when I was 4, mother when I was 15, I know how awful cancer can be for families. And so I think this is a good step forward. Within the Liberal Democrats, it's a free vote, as it should be. But I, as the leader, am really clear. This phase ban should go ahead.
And Downing Street has denied the UK is being taken for granted by Israel, as time's still not been found for a call between Rishi Sunak and Benjamin Netanyahu. The Prime Minister and his Israeli counterpart are due to talk about de-escalation of hostilities with Iran, amid concerns the crisis could spiral out of control. Israel have confirmed their war cabinet will meet today to discuss their response to Iran's missile and drone attack over the weekend. Iran's president says even the smallest action against Iran will be met with a severe, widespread and painful response. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's over to Martin.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now we start with the bedlam in Brussels. And these are live pictures. Police are still attempting to shut down that conference where Nigel Farage and former Home Secretary Suella Braverman have been speaking. Earlier on today, officers arrived at the National Conservatism Summit after a local mayor in the city of Brussels ordered the event to be shut down to guarantee public safety. That old chestnut. This was Nigel Farage's reaction soon after he was told that police were attempting to close the event down. Before that, let's speak to Chris Hope, our political editor, who joins me in the studio. Chris, extraordinary scenes in Brussels. Now, as we understand it, this was the third venue this attempted to get away at. The local mayor shut it down, sent in the police, and astonishing scenes.
Yeah, third venue in 5 days. I mean, it's been shut down at short notice. Had to move from hotel to hotel. They finally got it staged. We've had Miriam Cates, the rising star, Tory MP on the right, is speaking right now in Brussels at the NatCon event. Suella Braverman, the former Home Secretary, she was there. Before that, Nigel Farage, GB News presenter. This event happened in London last year, a stone's throw from the Home Office, in a big conference hall there. No problem. Obviously, outside, there's demonstrators, people shouting through megaphones, shouting about the Tories, being cross about the Tory party, which is fine in democracy, that's OK. But to close it down with the police blocking entrance, as you can see on your screen now, those are the police blocking the entrance to the hotel. It's beyond the pale. We're hearing responses today from the UK government. They have told GB News this hour for your show, Martin. It's unclear exactly what's happened here, but the scenes will worry anyone who believes in free speech. Free societies should be confident enough to allow free debate. We allow that in the UK, in London, but not allowed in Brussels. Now, why is that? You lived, didn't you, in Brussels for a bit? Yeah, I mean, I served as an MEP. This, incidentally, was Nigel Farage's first trip back to Brussels since Britain left the European Union. In fact, he referenced that in his speech, saying this makes him realise that it was the right thing to do. I'll tell you what, I'm not surprised by this. Because you were a Brexit Party MEP in Nigel Farage's party. Were you surprised by the way they behaved? No, I wasn't surprised by it, because the thing about people from the so-called liberal side of politics in Brussels, they don't mind who they lie in company with, and there's no greater proof of that, Chris, than Philippe Close, who's the mayor of the city of Brussels, the member of the Socialist Party who had this event closed down in June last year, happily attended the same event as Ali Reza Zaghani. He's the mayor of Tehran, who is considered an ultra-radical, a mouthpiece of the Ayatollah Khomeini, sanctioned by the European Union, no less, this individual, for serious human rights violations. And in that, they were forced to respond, saying just because certain people are present doesn't mean we agree with them. Chris, this is the embodiment of that beautiful hypocrisy you get in politics. They want to smear everybody they disagree with, but they're happy to turn a blind eye to the dubious morals of those they choose to be on the same side of. And we're waiting to hear, aren't we, for the reasoning why this happened. We don't know why this happened. We don't know why that could happen last year and then this year. This is unacceptable to the Mayor of Brussels. There was no, according to Nigel Farage, who's out there for GB News, there was not a lot of protests outside. So I think the idea had been they wanted to avoid any kind of protests outside the building. There was very little protest. In fact, it looks to us from the images now, the police outnumber any protest, judging by the camera pictures. So we'll wait to see what the justification was from the Mayor of Brussels. Yeah, we've got a few people inside there still we're going to get in touch with later in the show, including a Flemish MEP who was there when the police clamped
down. But earlier on, we were speaking to Jonathan Ashworth. And why don't we hear from Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth, who gave us his thoughts on the chaos earlier on GB News. And then get your reaction.
Free speech, and I hope you can get somebody from the Brussels authorities to come on and explain what's going on there. I'm not up to date with the latest ins and outs of it. What I do know is, and which I'm slightly surprised at, is that Suella Braverman is one of the guest speakers there, and I think some of the speakers, from what I understand, who have been advertised on the website for this conference, have very unsavoury views. I'm rather surprised that Suella Braverman's been allowed to go and speak at this event.
Interesting there, Chris, how Jonathan pivoted this to a bit of a barbed attack on Suella Braverman, as you'd expect. Wes Streeting, in fact, a short while ago said the same thing. Yeah. Suella Braverman isn't in the chamber today debating on smoking because she's surrounded by police and far-right fanatics in Brussels. So you'd expect the Labour Party to make hay over this.
Yeah, and they are. And for Labour, they think that they can point to the fact that Suella Braverman, a future possible leader, Liz Truss, her book launch tonight, they've been giving this document out to journalists today. They're trying to make clear that Trussonomics is the future direction for the Tory party. Now, that be disputed by the left of the party, but they want to try and portray the Tory party as getting more extreme to the right of politics, and bang in the centre is the Labour Party, and that's where Jonathan Ashworth and maybe even Wes Streeting, who's debating, of course, the health and the vaping bill in the House of Commons today. I mean, I wonder whether the remarks out from the UK government today is a chance for those around Rishi Sunak, his top team, to stress that he's a right-winger. He is trying to ban smoking, and lots of those on the right are saying, what on earth is going on? Loads of right-wing Tories have gone campaigning today. They've left London. They'd normally be seen to be voting for this ban. They're going to abstain.
So we understand a revolt of sorts is brewing. Penny Mordaunt rumoured to be among that. Kemi Badenoch, of course, Suella Braverman out of town. But another revolt, it should sail through, though, because, of course, the Labour Party back it. Yeah, but it's a free vote, so it's not rebellion, technically, but it is something which Rishi Sunak announced to some surprise at the party conference last October. For some, they see it as Sunak's gay marriage measure, which, of course, 10 years ago, David Cameron pushed through to legalise gay marriage. That was against lots of opposition from some right-wing Tory MPs and plenty in the grassroots. Similarly, this is an attempt to try and stop us all smoking by banning 15-year-olds smoking and increasing that ban every year, so never quite get to the point of being able to over the age to be allowed to buy cigarettes. People, though, say it's unenforceable. Imagine a 59-year-old and a 60-year-old. The 59-year-old can't buy a cigarette. The 60-year-old can. Who's going to ask for their ID in 30 years' time? Anyway, it's an attempt. New Zealand tried it and they've dropped it. They're preferring to spend money on tax cuts because of a change of government. I think Labour, though, are going to back this. If Labour take power, as the polls suggest, in the autumn, then it will be in place. Do you think it's enforceable? Because, look, we can't ban heroin. We can't stop crack cocaine. We can't stop kids accessing XXX rated pornography. We can't stop kids buying a packet of snouts now. This might sound good. It might make Rishi look like the patron saint of good health, but actually, is it the patron saint of Puritanism? And is that a traditionally conservative view? Obviously, Boris Johnson doesn't agree. He'd rather talk about Sir Winston Churchill and his love of cigars.
Well, for him, it's, the party of Churchill is banning cigars. Why is this the case? Maybe as many as 50 Tories might rebel. You mentioned those ministers. They won't have to resign. It's a free vote. Liz Truss wants to speak. George Galloway from the left, he's speaking. And we're seeing footage right now from the House of Commons chamber where that debate's carried on. Yeah, it's a big debate. I mean, whether it works is to wait and see. I mean, I think Tory MPs on the right are sitting to one side. We have heard Chris Whitty, the former chief medical officer at the time of the COVID pandemic, he's saying it's vital to take the pressure off the NHS and make us all live longer.
But then £10 billion a year is raised through tobacco revenue. So,
but cost to the NHS too from treating people with cancer.
Could argue they pay as they go. Anyway, Chris Hope, thanks for joining us. Always a pleasure. Moving on now. A Muslim student's challenge at the High Court against a London school's ban on prayer rituals has been rejected. And the student argued that the ban at Michaela Community School was discriminatory and unlawfully breached her right to religious freedom. However, the school said allowing prayers risks security threats and could undermine social cohesion among pupils. Well, joining us now from outside the High Court is GB News national reporter Theo Chikomba. Theo, welcome to the show. So, Catherine Birbalsingh, the head of the Michaela Academy, quite simply said this is a victory for all schools. Tell us about the ruling today at the High Court.
Yes, well, the Michaela Community School in northwest London has previously been described as one of the strictest schools in Britain. And in a two-day hearing which took place here at the High Court in January, the school told the court that if it allowed a prayer policy in their school, it would risk undermining inclusion for the pupils who attend that school. Now, we've heard a response from the student who brought forward this legal challenge. In a statement, she said, "I am obviously very disappointed that the judge did not agree with me. As is set out in the judgment, I do not agree that it would be too hard for the school to accommodate pupils who wish to pray in the lunch break. The school is very well run and generally very good at managing everything. The school doesn't wish to allow pupils to pray, has chosen a different path, and the judge has found in their favour. Even though I lost, I feel that I did the right thing in seeking to challenge the ban. I tried my best and was true to myself and my religion." But the head teacher has also responded via social media, saying that this is a victory for all schools. She said a school should be free to do what is right for pupils it serves. Now, on to the judgment itself, which was brought this morning in an 83-page document, and in it the judge says, "It seems to me that this case where the claimant at the very least impliedly accepted when she enrolled at the school that she would be subject to restrictions on her ability to manifest her religion. She knew that the school is secular, and her own evidence is that her mother wished her to go there because it was known to be strict." And they also went on to say she herself says that long before the prayer ritual was introduced, she and her friends believed that prayer was not permitted at school and therefore made up for missed prayers when she got home. Now, in terms of this policy, it was introduced in May 2023. This was following a number of incidents which occurred at the school, some which ended up on social media, and a petition was raised. And the school have also gone on to say reversing that this policy, this emergency ban, it would again expose them to what they've described as unacceptable risk of threats, and that's according to the lawyer who's representing them. Now, what this might mean is that it might give an indication or an idea for others who wish to bring forward a legal challenge like this in the future.
Thank you, Theo Chikomba. Thank you very much. That ruling from the High Court there, live in central London. I think this is the totemic moment. It really is. Something I've talked about a lot on the show, of course, is religious extremism in schools, particularly around the Batley Grammar School, 3 years and counting. The teacher and his family have been in hiding. Yesterday on the show, we talked about the Islamic Centre of England was rumbled being behind those protests. And a lot of people think that religious extremism is now behind these protests. It's driving the agenda within schools. Still joined in the studio by Chris Hope. Chris, these kind of rulings give you hope?
It does seem that way. I just wonder whether this ruling here, which is, some would say, a common-sense ruling, you've got to allow the head teacher to set the rules in a school and to have this challenge to her authority as by this pupil. It seems the right result of this High Court hearing. You heard last week the CAS review into trying to treat children who think they're trans in a more humane way, not to prescribe drugs needlessly. I sense the politics is going back to where we're being recentered, being recalibrated possibly, and that might be a good thing. It's so extreme, some of the debates on this on social media, that perhaps this is an indication that perhaps all the authorities in this country are moving back into the centre ground.
This isn't an isolated incident, of course. There was the Berkeley Academy, also in London. They had to close due to death threats, and there was a bomb scare. And what Catherine Birbalsingh has had to go through, Percy and her staff, has been outrageous. Let's all hope This is, as you say, a recalibration and a route to common sense, although I'll be speaking in the next hour with a Muslim scholar who thinks this was the wrong decision. So look forward to his point of view. We like to have all opinions here on GB News. Now, we'll have lots more on that story throughout the show, and there's plenty of coverage on our website, gbnews.com, and you've helped to make it the fastest-growing national news website in the country, so thank you very much indeed. Right, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win a Greek cruise, travel goodies and a 10 grand tax-free Moolah bank balance boost to you. And here's all the details you need to hop on board.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest prize so far. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Chris Hope sasaying away there to that Greek music. Plenty more to come on the way, including all the very latest on the chaos in Brussels. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's the first time we've had an admission from someone who at least used to be very senior in the party, saying that this election is not about winning, really, for the Conservatives now. It's about mitigating the losses.
There is broad recognition that this election has already been lost and that it's about damage limitation. And it is really important because it's the difference between whether, if Labour win a slim majority, then the fight is on for the next election. I know it seems silly to look 5 years ahead, but it does make a difference, versus basically accepting that we have 10 years of Labour government ahead.
Having an acknowledgement that the Tories are going to lose and lose badly, disastrously maybe, having that acknowledgement coming from somebody so senior is very demoralising for everybody else in the party, but also doesn't it make it then look rather immoral for them to just drag on right through to maybe November?
Personally, I think Rishi Sunak should name the date now. I think he should name it for October or November.
In terms of reform, if they're only 4 points behind the Conservatives in the latest poll, do we need to stop the narrative, which we have been using legitimately, saying, well, they're doing all right in the polls, but they won't win any seats? Do we need to change that perspective now?
I think it's really difficult to say. It depends on Reform's electoral strategy. There's a lot of evidence that in certain parts of the country with certain demographics, they do have a really good chance. So I think if they target seats in the Red Wall and other places where there's big disillusionment with the Conservatives and what they'd promised, I can't imagine that Reform are at the stage where they could take masses of seats. It's more about that portion of the vote that they'll be taking away that I think is going to result in that massive Labour landslide.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:26. I'm Martin Daubney, and this is GB News. Now, plenty more to bring you on the show, including all the very latest on the bedlam in Brussels as police attempt to shut down the National Conservatism event there. Look at that, police cordon outside. We have people inside. We're speaking to them later in the show. But before that, Rishi Sunak faces the prospect of a major backbench rebellion over his plans to ban smoking for all of those born after January the 1st, 2009, meaning the Prime Minister may need to rely on votes from the Labour Party to pass one of his flagship policies. However, whilst many Conservative MPs oppose the proposed ban for what they regard as its attack on personal liberties, it does have a lot of support outside the House of Commons, with England's Chief Medical Officer, Sir Chris Whitty, and Britain's 4 Chief Nursing Officers all urging MPs to back this smoking ban. Well, I'm now joined in the studio by Andrei Kucherov, the Chief Executive of the UK Vaping Industry Association, who is with me in the studio. Welcome to the show, Andrei. So the thing about this, right, is how do you stop teenagers from doing anything? Prohibition has never really worked. It forces things underground. It drives people into the hands of a black market. Surely the ban in itself is unenforceable and not conservative.
Yes, yeah, and unfortunately, teenagers do these things. We wouldn't want to see teenagers vaping or smoking, for that matter. But as you say, prohibition unfortunately doesn't work, and we need to remember vaping products are already banned for the underaged. Yet kids are getting hold of these products. So what we don't need now is more bans, more restrictions, if the government can't even enforce its existing laws. The Tory party was known for being strong on law and order, but it let this black market flourish. So what we need really is to prosecute these criminals, introduce harsh fines, and go after these criminals. What we don't need is more headline bans which don't have any effect.
And we can see live pictures there from the House of Commons being debated ahead of that vote. And it's worth pointing out the NHS website actually currently is in favour of vapes and e-cigarettes. It says they're far less harmful than cigarettes and they can help you to quit smoking for good. But of course, it does say they're not recommended for non-smokers and cannot be sold to people under 18 years of age. But do you feel this whole debate is lumping vaping and smoking together and making them seem like they're comparatively bad for you?
Absolutely, yeah. It should not really be one shared bill, because vaping is really the solution to smoking. So, as you said, Public Health England is clear. Vaping is at least 95% less harmful than smoking. It's twice as effective than any other method to quit. So it's completely two different things. And the message to smokers out there should be the best thing they can do for their health is to quit smoking completely or to switch to vaping. And I think the government is confusing the issue. There's talks about bans, there's talks about more taxes, and this is all going into the wrong direction. If the government wants to achieve a smoke-free 2030 for this country, it needs to embrace vaping as part of the solution. And the UK has now achieved one of the lowest smoking rates in Europe, thanks to a very pro-vaping stance in the past of that government. So what we need as a industry is a licensing scheme which regulates vaping products similar to the alcohol licensing scheme, where you restrict where these products can be sold and you introduce a £750 fee for that licensing scheme. So you could raise £50 million without cost to any taxpayer to give trading standards the actual resource and funding to go after these criminals, stop the criminals, protect the kids, and help smokers to quit smoking.
Are you confident that there is no health risk with vapes? I saw a report, we covered it on the show a couple of weeks ago, about a new report showing there were signs of cancerous cells in the mouths of vapers. In comparison to smoking itself, what are the risks?
Well, just to point out that study, the authors of that study were clear themselves that the study doesn't show that vaping causes cancer. So it's still very clear, the evidence is very clear that vaping is at least 95% less harmful than smoking. And vaping has been now around for 15 years. We don't see any uptake in any lung risks for vaping. So the best thing a smoker can do is quit completely or switch to vaping. And I think even Chris Whitty will agree on that.
OK, super. Thank you very much for joining us in the studio. Andrei Kucherov, the Chief Executive of the UK Vaping Industry Association. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
And of course, we'll follow that vote throughout the show and bring you the results of it as they land throughout the evening on other shows to follow mine. Of course, there's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including the bedlam in Brussels as police attempt to shut down the Conservative event there with keynote speakers, including our very own Nigel Farage and former Home Secretary Suella Braverman. Miriam Cates is also, I believe, currently speaking. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines, and it's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories this hour. Government sources have told GB News the attempt to shut down the National Conservatism Conference is a concern for free speech. Nigel Farage was on stage at the event when he heard the news.
I understand the police are very, very keen to close this down. So if they're going to close it down, they can close it down with me on stage, can't they?
The event had already changed venue 3 times after public pressure and previous attempts to close it down. It's understood the order came from local Brussels Mayor Amir Kerr in a move he said was to guarantee public safety. It followed a post he made on social media saying the far right is not welcome. Organisers say the event will continue for as long as it can, but delegates have been encouraged not to leave because police will not let them back in. Policing Minister Chris Philp says new powers for chief constables to sack rogue officers will root out those unfit to wear the badge. Under the new powers, chief constables will be put in charge of misconduct hearings, making it easier to remove officers in their own force who are found guilty. The changes, which come into force on the 7th of May, follow a review into police dismissals after the conviction of David Carrick for multiple sexual offences while serving as a police officer. A High Court ruling dismissing a Muslim student's challenge against her school's prayer ban has been described as a victory for all schools. The student argued the policy at Michaela Community School was discriminatory and breached her right to religious freedom. However, head teacher Catherine said schools should not be forced to change their approach simply because a child or parent decide they don't like something. The judge upheld the school's position, highlighting safety concerns. And social media platform X is planning to start charging all new users a small fee to interact with posts. The site's owner, Elon Musk, says charging new users to like and reply to tweets is the only way to stop what he described as the relentless onslaught of bots and fake accounts. Last year, a pilot scheme was launched in New Zealand and in the Philippines, which charged a $1 a year subscription. It's reported the trial will now be rolled out more widely. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2450 and €1.1709. The price of gold is £1,901.83 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 7,811 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. We've still got loads more to come on the show, including, of course, all the latest on the bedlam in Brussels. But first, there's a new way to get in touch with us here at GB News, and here's Bev Turner with all of the details.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. Simply go to gbnews.com/your say.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to County Durham firstly, and the A1M around the Bird Tree turn-off junction 58. Now a lane shut southbound, there's been a collision. That means on the northbound side, the entry slip is closed off there. There's emergency pothole repairs. In both cases, busy but moving. Clockwise M25, queuing just towards Lakeside at junction 30. There was a breakdown there. All the lanes are back open now, we can see on the cameras. Still seeing some residual delays though. Northbound M23, now all the traffic at the moment is being held away from Gatwick Airport at 9 to the M25 at 8. Queuing there, there's a breakdown, and the A380 in Sandygate in Devon southbound remains shut from the B3195 down toward the Ware Barton roundabout. It continues to queue for investigation work. And that's your latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
I wonder, is this the fundamental distinction we need to make between Islam, which is a private religion people may practice freely amongst themselves, and Islamism? When you try and place those values upon other people, place that way of being, force it on people who don't want it.
Tom, I have been very much clear about this thing, that Islam is a religion and people are free to follow that religion in the UK, in a free Western society. So we have no problem with people following their religion as long as it is not being imposed onto the wider society. And when you talk about drawing a distinction between Islam and Islamism, people like me, you and me, we are drawing that distinction. We're trying to maintain that distinction. But if you look at the commentator from the Muslim community, some commentator, they would like to blur this line and they would ask you, what is Islamism? Where does it exist? Sorry, it does exist. We see it. And the teacher, this incident is an epitome of that kind of, ideology being prevalent, in our society.
Khadija, do you worry that these views are typical for some sections of society? Do you think that there's a problem with some Muslim men, that they have perhaps views that we don't consider to be British values?
There are certain readings of religion which are misogynistic, which are discriminatory, which are homophobic. We need to be honest about it. We need to be calling it out whenever we hear these kind of views. It's been a long time that we are letting these kind of ideologies crawling in, spreading tentacles in British society, and we are just ignoring it in the name of respecting people's culture and religion. You are not suppressed in the UK.
Welcome back. It's 3:39. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, UK employment has leapt to 4.2% in February, up from 3.9%, and that's according to official figures from the Office for National Statistics. That's considerably higher than expected, and analysts are putting this down to the impact of higher interest rates on employers. And this comes as real wages have risen to their fastest rate since 2021. Well, join us now for more on this good news is our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, with On the Money. Liam, always a delight to have you on the show. Yet more good news for GB PLC. Tell us more.
Well, a bit of a mixed bag, really, this data out this morning. On the one hand, as you say, unemployment's up. It's still relatively low by historic standards at 4.2%. But those unemployment figures, they don't capture a lot of people who aren't looking for work and who are out of work. So it is low by international standards and low by historic standards, but it is tipping up a little bit, unemployment, and the numbers don't really capture everything that's going on. But on the other hand, the wage data is really quite encouraging. But again, I'm an economist, as always, on the one hand, on the other, there's a little bit of a fly in the ointment on that as well. Let's have a look at this wage data, which came out this morning. The ONS tells us that average wages across the UK were up 6% during the 3 months to February, so that's December, January and February, compared to the same periods 12 months before. Real wages, if you take account of inflation, are up 2.1%, and that is actually a big rise. That's the sharpest rise in real wages since July 2021. Because what's happening now is that wage growth is going higher than inflation as inflation comes down. So that's the sharpest rise in real wages since 2021. And that makes it harder for, and this is the bad news, the Bank of England to cut interest rates. Why is that? Because they're worried that these increases in real wages, the members of the Monetary Policy Committee at the Bank of England who set interest rates, they're worried that will feed into inflation and set inflation running again. Now, as it happens, Martin, the inflation number for March comes out tomorrow, 7 a.m. I'll be here in the GB News studio, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, to report on it. And that inflation number is likely to come down quite sharply, maybe below 3%, maybe even approaching 2%, the Bank of England's target. And there'll be lots of claims, lots of cries, oh, the Bank of England has to cut interest rates now. And the first time that they're going to meet is on May the 9th. But the thing is, even if headline inflation's coming down, Martin, if real wages are going up sharply, and we haven't even talked about the oil price, which we talked about yesterday, but it's, you know, still around $90 a barrel, up from $73 a barrel as recently as mid-January. It's a 25% rise. If you have high wages, if you have high oil prices, that's going to make it very difficult for the Bank of England to cut interest rates. And a lot of people now think the first interest rate cut isn't going to come until not so much the end of spring, but more mid-summer. That's partly because of the oil price. It's also because of what's happening in the US. US inflation has just gone back up to 3.5%. And where the US goes, the UK tends to follow. So there is some good news in this data today. It's certainly good news that real wages are going up as the cost of living crisis is squeezed, but it does make it more difficult for the Bank of England to lower interest rates, giving families with mortgages some kind of relief. But final thing I'd say, a lot of GB News viewers, they quite like higher interest rates, of course, because they get a decent return on their savings, particularly if they're pensioners.
Liam, can I quickly ask you, as I have you here, the FTSE 100 taking a bit of a battering today because of the situation in the Middle East. Should people be concerned, even those who don't have stocks and shares, because of impact their pensions? Could the faraway trouble in the Middle East be impacting our pounds and pence and our purses back here in Blighty?
Look, we live in an interconnected, globalised world. The UK is a very internationally exposed economy. Our stock market is very internationally exposed. The FTSE 100 is really an index of international companies as opposed to UK companies. UK companies are more what we call the FTSE 250, which includes quite a few less big companies. They're not small, they're just less big. So, yeah, I think it is right that we keep an eye on these things. I would say, though, repeating what I said to you yesterday, Martin, you know, we've just had the first direct attack by Iran on Israel in, living memory, and yet there is a sense in the markets that there probably isn't going to be an escalation of that. We should be really thankful for that. And that's why, frankly, oil is at the moment nearer $90 a barrel than $100 a barrel. So, yes, of course, this international turmoil will impact stocks and shares in the UK. And yes, of course, that could have knock-on effects. So, of course, you only lose money on shares when you actually sell them. Things do go up and down. So I would say a mixed bag again. Good wage data, not so good unemployment data. Difficulty for the Bank of England, though, to lower interest rates, particularly because of the oil price and also this geopolitical tension in the Middle East and beyond.
Superb, Liam Halligan. As ever, a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you, mate. Now, very shortly, we'll be crossing back to Brussels for the very latest on the police attempt to shut down a Conservative event there. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office. It's a bright day out there, some sunny spells even, but it's still blustery. There are still showers coming through. High pressure, tantalisingly close, but we're going to have to wait a few more days for that to arrive. For the time being, we've got low pressure to the north and to the east, bringing this cool northerly airflow and bringing further showers in the airflow. Now, the showers overnight become more confined to the north of Scotland, where they'll be frequent and prolonged. Eastern England as well, and a few toppling into Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and Western England. In between, plenty of clear spells, and with lighter winds, it's going to be a bit chillier as we begin Wednesday. Certainly a fresh start out there, but a bright start. Some long spells of sunshine for Western Scotland, Southern Scotland, parts of England and Wales as well. Now we're going to see further showers coming to the north and east of Scotland, as well as parts of eastern England. There'll be fewer, I think, compared with Tuesday. And we're going to see the cloud thicken for Northern Ireland with outbreaks of rain. Feeling quite cool here, 7 Celsius. Otherwise, where we do get lengthy, clear and drier weather across central parts, 12 or 13 Celsius. So a cool day, but feeling pleasant where we've got the dry and bright weather. And a bright start to Thursday. Again, a chilly start to the day for many, but we're going to see cloud and rain spread into northern parts of the country. That will spread south during Friday, clearing to sunny skies at the weekend.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:48. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, the National Trust have come under fire from locals in the village of Sudbury in Derbyshire after they were told that their community sports field was being taken back for the Trust to meet their eco-targets, evicting the local football club that currently use it. And our reporter Jack Carson has this story.
In the quaint Derbyshire village of Sudbury, there's a storm brewing between the local football club and the National Trust. This grass field might seem unremarkable, but for hundreds of years it's been part of the Sudbury Hall estate, playing host to the village football and cricket matches. Now the National Trust are planning to put an end to that tradition in the name of biodiversity, with plans for trees and plants where the football club play. Some worry it breaks a memorandum of wishes from the late Lord Vernon, whose family have lived here since 1660. Manager of Sudbury FC Tom Crutchley says he's upset at the decision.
Naturally disappointed. We've been here, this is our 9th year. We've put a lot of effort into here to keep playing, to maintain it. I'm from the village originally, so personally it was it is very upsetting. Not just for our team, but for future generations. But the amount of land they have here, over 20 acres, I believe, there's surely enough room for that, and for the amount of times that we play, because we play between 10 to 15 home games a year, under 2% of the time that we're here, so we're not really in the way as much. The National Trust want to support local communities and build strong relations, and by doing this, not letting us play here, it probably doesn't help that.
The proposed changes have upset local people who worry businesses in the area might also feel the impact of losing it as a community space. MP for Derbyshire Dales Sarah Dines says the National Trust aren't respecting the history of the site.
I feel they're trampling over the wishes of historic owners who gave up this wonderful site for the nation. And for over 100 years, people have played football and cricket here. It's incredibly sad. incredibly sad. And it's against the wishes of a lot of people locally who've written to me from the village. And I know it's a tricky issue maintaining this sort of ground, but the government's given a lot of money for grassroots sport, and there would be funds available to keep it as it is.
It's not just plans for the sports field that have upset the Member of Parliament. Sudbury Hall lives under the branding of the Children's Country House, a decision which Dine says is disrespectful to the history of the estate.
I mean, this is fake to make it into a children's theme park. It's almost a reimagining, and in fact, that's the very words it says on their website. The house is reopened, it's been reimagined. I don't want our heritage to be reimagined. I think the National Trust has been captured by people who have different ideas than most people in this country.
In response to the concerns raised about the plans for the sports field, a National Trust spokesperson said, although the National Trust will not be able to continue running the land as a space for hire on a commercial basis, the local community will continue to be able to enjoy it free of charge for family leisure time, games and activities such as picnicking, dog walking and village celebrations. We are also looking at plans to restore the land back to a Grade 2 listed landscape, which will include grassland and the planting of new trees that will blend the area with the surrounding historic parkland. Whilst the public will still be able to roam these historic grounds, the village feels like a legacy is being snatched away. Jack Carson, GB News, Sudbury.
Now, there's a new way for you to get in touch with me here at GB News. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. So get in touch all the usual ways. What do you think about this clampdown in Brussels? Currently speaking, we'll have all the latest from Brussels in the next hour. You can see there, this is still outside the National Conservatism event in Brussels. A reminder that the Mayor of Brussels sent in the police because he believed there'll be severe disruption at this event, a risk of public disorder. Well, that hasn't happened. Philippe Close, who's the Mayor of the city of Brussels and a member of the Socialist Party, said the hard right aren't welcome in Brussels, and to prove that he wasn't at all authoritarian, he sent in the police to close down the event. Nigel Farage was mid-flow. The event was just getting underway. Suella Braverman due to attend. Miriam Cates, we understand, currently speaking. Viktor Orban, the president of Hungary, was due to speak. And I've just received this extraordinary document. This is from an interviewee that we are going to have on the show shortly, Paul Coleman, a free speech advocate, has just posted an English language translation of the actual documents that were sent out explaining why people were being turned away. He claims that people at this event were homophobes. They were apparently disrespectful of human rights and minorities. They were traditionalists, as if that's a crime. And we can also cite an author of controversial works on political Islam. Whereas it cannot be ruled out that extremist groups in Belgium or Europe are associating themselves with this event or seeking to undermine the safety of the participants in this conference, whereas some of them are under police protection in several countries of origin. The clear implication here that extremists from across Europe would have attended this event. Well, there hasn't been any evidence provided of that. In fact, nobody can get in or out of the venue. Well, you are allowed out, but you cannot get back in. Now, I just want to point out, it's come to my attention that last June, the mayor of Tehran, a gentleman called Alreza Zakani, who's known as an ultra-radical, the mouthpiece of the Ayatollah Khomeini, he's sanctioned by the European Union, currently sanctioned by the EU for serious human rights violations. Well, he was invited to Brussels. He appeared at the same event as that mayor. Funny, isn't it? Because he chooses to hang around with people like that, but not people at the Nigel Farage conference. We'll have all the latest from Brussels in the next hour. I'm Martin Daubney. Now it's your weather with Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office. It's a bright day out there, some sunny spells even, but it's still blustery. There are still showers coming through. High pressure, tantalisingly close, but we're going to have to wait a few more days for that to arrive. For the time being, we've got low pressure to the north and to the east, bringing this cool northerly airflow and bringing further showers in the airflow. Now, the showers overnight become more confined to the north of Scotland, where they'll be frequent and prolonged. Eastern England as well, and a few toppling into Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and Western England. In between, plenty of clear spells, and with lighter winds, it's going to be a bit chillier as we begin Wednesday. Certainly a fresh start out there, but a bright start. Some long spells of sunshine for Western Scotland, Southern Scotland, parts of England and Wales as well. Now, we're going to see further showers coming to the north and east of Scotland, as well as parts of eastern England. There'll be fewer, I think, compared with Tuesday. And we're going to see the cloud thicken for Northern Ireland with outbreaks of rain. Feeling quite cool here, 7 Celsius. Otherwise, where we do get lengthy, clear and drier weather across central parts, 12 or 13 Celsius. So a cool day, but feeling pleasant where we've got the dry and bright weather. And a bright start to Thursday. Again, a chilly start to the day for many, but we're going to see cloud and rain spread into northern parts of the country. That will spread south during Friday, clearing to sunny skies at the weekend.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Hello again, good afternoon. I'm Jules Buckley to the southwest of Hull. Firstly, the Humber Bridge has a speed limit in place of 30 miles per hour. That is due to the windy conditions. Towards Ollerton in Nottinghamshire, the Blythe Road, the A614. Now, chop between the Walesby turn-off and the Balsamore turn-off in Thoresby, closed and queuing at the scene of a collision. St Albans in Hertfordshire next, and the Hatfield Road, the A1057, remains closed. That's between Beaconsfield Road and Lattimore Road. Emergency repairs causing delays. Sandygate in Devon and the A380 southbound between the King Stainton turn-off towards the Ware Barton roundabout, closed in the roadworks and queuing for investigation work. And on the trains between London Euston and Watford Junction, delays are up to 50 minutes on Avanti West Coast and London North Western. And that's your latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest prize so far. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for 2 worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. On today's show, police in Brussels are attempting to shut down the National Conservatism Conference, gagging Nigel Farage, Suella Braverman and Viktor Orban. We'll be live from the venue for a frontline account for an MEP and free speech activists. Next, a London headmistress who has won the right to ban a Muslim pupil from praying has called the High Court ruling a victory for all schools. Will we finally see an end to religious extremists meddling with British schools? I'll speak to a Muslim cleric who thinks this was a bad idea. And today, the government faces yet another revolt over its plan to ban teenagers from smoking for life. Is this clampdown sensible, or merely the slippery slope to Puritanism? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. Astonishing scenes in Brussels. Total bedlam in Brussels. In fact, we're about to speak to a couple of gentlemen who were at that venue in Brussels when the Bother Boys turned up and closed it down. An extraordinary statement from the mayor, the socialist mayor of Brussels. Live pictures on your screen now. Philippe Close, the mayor of the city of Brussels, issued a police dispersal order. We have a full translation of that. Incredible words put forward, accusing attendees of being extremists, homophobes, and all manner of other things. We'll also speak to a Flemish MP who was inside for what many are seeing as a nationwide clampdown on conservatism. Don't forget, Brussels prides itself on being the home of the European Union, allied to the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. Is this what free speech looks like in modern Europe? Get in touch. Tell me what you think about this today. There's a new way of getting in touch. You simply visit gbnews.com/your say. You can get in touch with me. Keep it clean, and I'll read out the latest throughout the show. But first, here's your news headlines, and it's Polly Biddlehurst.
Martin, thank you. Good afternoon. Well, the top story from the GB newsroom, of course, as you've been hearing. Government sources have told GB News the attempt to shut down the National Conservatism Conference in Brussels is a concern for free speech. Nigel Farage was on stage at the event when he heard the news.
I understand the police are very, very keen to close this down. So if they're going to close it down, they can close it down with me on stage, can't they?
Well, the National Conservatism Conference had already changed their venue 3 times after public pressure and previous attempts to close it down. It's understood the order came from the local mayor in Brussels, Emir Keir, in a move he said was to guarantee public safety. It followed a post he made on social media saying the far right is not welcome. Well, organisers say the event will continue for as long as it can, but delegates have been encouraged not to leave because police won't let them back in. The former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, spoke to Nigel Farage after her own speech at conference.
Thankfully, you and I got to make our speeches in favour of controlling our borders and protecting our communities amongst like-minded Democrats. Many of us there are democratically elected politicians. Many of us are leaders in our field, academics, thinkers, writers. And it's frankly staggering that the mayor of Brussels has deployed his thought police to cancel what is a peaceful event focused on how we can better represent the millions of people around the European continent.
Suella Braverman. Well, Labour's Jonathan Ashworth questioned whether Conservatives from the UK should have been there at all.
I think some of the speakers, from what I understand, who have been advertised on the website for this conference, have very unsavoury views. I'm rather surprised that Suella Braverman's been allowed to go and speak at this event. Why is Rishi Sunak not getting a grip of this situation? Why is he not asking Suella Braverman to pull out of this event? Because some of the characters involved, at least according to their website, have made all kinds of comments which I don't think the Rishi Sunak's Tory party would want to associate themselves with.
Policing Minister Chris Philp says new powers for chief constables to sack rogue police officers will root out those unfit to wear the badge. Under the new powers, chief constables will be put in charge of misconduct hearings, making it easier to remove officers in their own force who are found guilty. The changes, which come into effect next month, follow a review into police dismissals after the conviction of David Carrick for multiple sexual offences while serving as a police officer. A High Court ruling dismissing a Muslim student's challenge against her school's prayer ban has been described as a victory for all schools. The student argued the policy at the Michaela Community School was discriminatory and breached her right to religious freedom. But the head teacher, Catherine Bebel-Singh, said schools shouldn't be forced to change their approach simply because a child or parent decide they don't like it. The judge upheld the school's position, highlighting safety concerns. And despite the ruling, the students' legal team expressed their disappointment, saying it's important to promote religious freedoms in educational settings. The Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, has denied that a ban on tobacco and vape sales will cause a black market boom. If you're watching on television, let's take a look inside the Commons, where the Tobacco and Vapes Bill is being brought before MPs for discussion today for the very first time. If it becomes law, it would be an offence to sell tobacco products to anyone born after the 1st of January 2009. Liberal Democrats leader Sir Ed Davey says he's going to back the bill.
I've been convinced by the health arguments. Tobacco smoking is the largest preventable cause of death in our country. And having lost both my parents to cancer as a child, my father died when I was 4, mother when I was 15, I know how awful cancer can be for families. And so I think this is a good step forward. Within the Liberal Democrats, it's a free vote, as it should be. But I, as the leader, am really clear. This phase ban should go ahead.
Ed Davey. Now, Downing Street has denied the UK is, quote, being taken for granted by Israel, as time's still not been found for a call between Rishi Sunak and Benjamin Netanyahu. The Prime Minister and Israeli counterpart are due to talk about a de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East with Iran, amid concerns the crisis could get out of control. Israel has confirmed their war cabinet will meet today to discuss their response to Iran's missile and drone attack over the weekend. Iran's president, meanwhile, says even the smallest action against his country will be met with a severe, widespread and painful, he said, response. That's the news. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now we start with the bedlam in Brussels, and these are live pictures on your screen. Police are still attempting to shut down a conference where Nigel Farage and former Home Secretary Suella Braverman have been speaking. Earlier on, officers arrived at the National Conservatism Summit after a local mayor ordered the event to be shut down to guarantee public safety. Well, Nigel Farage's reaction soon after he was told about the situation said it was a clear example of modern-day communism. Well, let's return now to Brussels and speak to the Executive Director of ADF UK, Paul Coleman. Paul, welcome to the show. ADF UK, that's the Alliance for Defending Freedom. Paul, you're there. I understand you attempted to get inside the event. You were prevented from doing so by police, but you are due to speak tomorrow. Will the event go ahead, and what's the mood on the ground to this clampdown?
I have no idea at the moment whether I'll be able to speak tomorrow because I have the police barricade behind me. It's quite an extraordinary situation. The event is still going on inside, but the police have taken the decision to prevent anyone else from getting inside. And so myself, a number of other speakers, a number of the people who are planning to attend have been kept outside all day, waiting to see if the order of the mayor will be overturned in the courts. There's a live court case going on right now to see if that decision of the mayor will be overturned and if the police barricade will be removed.
And Paul, you just tweeted an English language translation of that mayor's police order explaining the reasoning behind this clampdown. Can you talk us through the justifications that have been given and on what basis can this clampdown be justified?
Well, it's really quite extraordinary. The mayor lists a number of essentially just political disagreements with whatever is taking place inside and uses those political justifications for the police barricading entrance to the event. Now, he goes on to cite risk of public safety, as we'd expect, but I've been here all afternoon. There really is no public safety issue at all. It's a totally peaceful conference. It is a conference conference that attracts mainstream speakers and mainstream views from across the whole continent. I was due to speak on the highly controversial topic of crisis of the family in Europe. I was going to speak about the impact of fatherless homes and what that means for society, these sorts of topics. And yet, because the mayor disagrees with some of the political views, he has ordered the police to barricade the entrance to this event.
It's an extraordinary list of allegations on this document. I just want to read a couple out as well, extra ones, Paul, as well as people inside being accused of being traditionalists, whatever that means. I'm assuming that means you agree with the traditional family unit, therefore that's a problem. Apparently inside are also homophobes and those disrespectful of human rights and minorities, and we can also cite an author of controversial works on political Islam. Now, these aren't the words of a student union leader, these are the words of the mayor of Brussels. Extraordinary allegations of the people inside and the use of public order concerns. That's something that's typically used by student unions, not mayors of municipal capital cities in Europe.
Is being shut down. It is quite extraordinary. It's really just a collection of catchphrases, and to think that a conference here in the heart of Europe, the heart of the European institutions, is being shut down. And it's so often the case, it's being done in the name of protecting and saving democracy. It is quite incredible. We talk all the time about cancel culture, and here we're seeing it on full display as police have been deployed by a political figure to prevent alternative political views from being discussed.
And Paul, this extraordinary police order concludes with the fact that this event could undeniably lead to violent reactions and, in fact, to considerable disturbance of public order, including public safety, tranquility and peace. Paul, you're outside the venue. This is a picture painted of social breakdown, of chaos in the streets. Is anything like that happening where you're standing?
Right. No, absolutely not. It's in fact, there's not very much happening at all at the moment, and I think it is quite clear that this conference could easily go ahead. You could see they could easily allow people to enter here. They could easily protect, if there was a public order, a public safety issue. I think it seems clear to me and everyone else around here that would have been easily handled and easily managed by the police. So what we see is just a very clear pretext for shutting down something with which the mayor disagrees ultimately, and he's using this claim of public safety, public order, essentially as an excuse to shut down views with which he disagrees.
And Paul, you say at present this ruling is being challenged in the courts. What do you expect the likely outcome will be? I mean, there are some pretty serious allegations being laid at the attendees, at the people inside, at the organisers. They seem to be baseless at best and defamatory at worst. Do you think this will get overturned? Do you think the event will go ahead?
It's really hard to say what the outcome of the ruling is going to be at this stage. Of course, there is a deference to what the police recommend. There is a deference to when people cite public safety and public order. That's not something that will be overturned lightly. And so myself and others involved, we don't know yet what the outcome of that case will be. But regardless of that ruling, I think that this is certainly not going to be the last that we hear about this. In fact, I'm a lawyer, a human rights lawyer. I work a lot on freedom of speech, freedom of assembly in Europe, and myself and my colleagues will certainly be looking to see what further legal action can be taken, even outside of the court decision today.
OK, thank you for joining us live and direct from outside that closed down conference, National Conservatism Conference. That was the Executive Director of ADF UK, Paul Coleman. Now, we just had a statement from Number 10 on this issue, and it's this. The PM's official spokesman describes Brussels police shutdown of the National Conservatism Conference as extremely disturbing, also saying the Prime Minister is an advocate of free speech. and that there are no plans for protests to the EU as there is no UK government representative at the event. Well, I'm now joined by barrister and writer Stephen Barrett, and a great friend of the show. Stephen, these are extraordinary scenes. We just read through a police banning order issued there by the mayor of the municipal city of Brussels, Philippe Close, accusing people inside of being homophobes, Islamophobes, traditionalists, whatever that means, as if that is a crime, saying that serious public order offences are undeniably going to happen. And yet on the ground there's a scene of bemusement and confusion and a few people milling about. Stephen Barrett, in terms of the legal implications of this is extraordinary, isn't it?
It is quite obviously, on the face of it, a breach of human rights. And what happened before the Second World War was that the continent fell into confusion about basic rights and how everybody ought to behave. And then they behaved appallingly during the war years, many of them. And afterwards, we gave them the Human Rights Convention in order to teach them how to behave. And what's been very interesting is how the Belgian police have just gone along with what this, and I understand he's a relatively minor official. I understand he's not the mayor of Brussels. I think there is one mayor of Brussels, and then there is a level below that of sort of other municipal mayors of little areas, and he's one of those. So he's a relatively low-grade bureaucratic, person, a part of the machine. Yet all of these officers have responded en force. That is quite shocking. We must all thank our lucky stars that there is no crime happening in Brussels today, so that all of these officers are free to police a political event. I think it's a breach of the European Convention of Human Rights. I think it's a breach of what the EU call their fundamental rights. And I'm not an expert on Belgian law, and it's very important that I do not come across in any way as an expert on Belgian law. But I thought I would Google their constitution. And their constitution guarantees freedom of assembly, particularly if it's indoors. They draw a line between indoors and outdoors, and this is very clearly indoors. And so I think that this is prima facie a breach of the Belgian constitution, although there's an argument there, because the Belgian constitution, in a way that probably we might think is a bit un-PC now, specifies that Belgians have protections rather than everyone, which is, I don't know if what a Belgian court would do, but if they were Belgian, then they'd definitely, in my view, be allowed to have this assembly. The point I'd like to make to your viewers is, and I think it's a really important one, we keep making this mistake of putting fundamental rights into law and thinking that sorts everything. And then everybody sort of dusts off their hands and goes down the pub and just assumes everything's okay. And that was how Germany, before the Second World War, fell into what it fell into. So they had in their constitution, this is the Weimar Republic, they had fundamental rights like human rights. And they thought that would keep them safe forever from this type of monstrous behavior. We didn't do that. We didn't put it into law and think that the lawyers would look after everything. We talked to each other, and we had basic fundamental principles that we kept, if you like, in the political or the cultural sphere. And as a result, we were better able to prevent this type of thing. And one of the great things from my point of view is watching the British reaction to this, which is almost universally horrific. I mean, these are not in any way extremist political figures. The idea that they are homophobic is absurd. At least one of them is a friend of mine. This is just absurd. What we are seeing is the end result of believing that putting fundamental principles into law will solve everything. It won't. You have to have a very furious rush to the courts. Maybe this time the Belgian courts will get there in time, but not everybody has access to courts. If you believe in fundamental rights, and it's a political position, but I do believe in fundamental rights, you have to protect them properly, which is by having everybody be a part of them and everybody, expressing a political opinion on them, not making them a special preserve of lawyers who just, frankly, Martin, we can't be trusted.
Stephen Barrett, well, I certainly trust your expertise and apolitical insight as ever, and an astonishing thing to say that there could be a breach of the European Court of Human Rights in Brussels against Nigel Farage. You couldn't make this up. Thank you, Stephen Barrett, for joining us on the show. And why don't we hear now from Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth, who gave us his thoughts on the chaos in Brussels earlier on GB News.
Of free speech, and I hope you can get somebody from the Brussels authorities to come on and explain what's going on there. I'm not up to date with the latest ins and outs of it. What I do know is, and which I'm slightly surprised at, is that Suella Braverman is one of the guest speakers there, and I think some of the speakers, from what I understand, who have been advertised on the website for this conference, have very unsavoury views. I'm rather surprised that Suella Braverman's been allowed to go and speak at this event.
And we'll have the latest on that story, of course, throughout the show. It's an astonishing turn of events. But don't miss out on your chance to win a £10,000 Greek cruise, a luxury travel bundle and a whopping 10 grand in tax-free moolah. It's our biggest prize of the year so far. And here's how you could hop on board.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Great stuff now. We've got plenty more to bring you. We'll be back with the latest bedlam from Brussels very shortly. Don't go anywhere. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Cheryl Baker. Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning.
When you think back to 1981, I mean, obviously, the ABBA victory then wasn't all that long ago, 9 years earlier. Do you think they had a huge influence then on the sort of direction that Eurovision was taking?
Yeah, they did. They changed it completely. Because up to then, it had all been very staid and a bit posh, long frock, sticky bow ties, you know. And then they came along and they blew it out of the water. They looked so different. And they modernised it. And I think, yeah, it made a big change. Made a big change after that.
And we were watching your performance on Eurovision a little bit earlier on of making your mind up. I mean, you had so much fun, didn't you, up on that stage? Were you, in some part, inspired by ABBA?
Yes, I would say so. It was, ABBA was 74. I turned professional in 75 and did my first song for Europe, which was, you know, when they choose the British song to go forward. I did my first one in February 1976. So, yeah, it was only months after ABBA's performance that I started my own Eurovision journey. Yeah, they just changed the face of it. They changed the face of Eurovision. And if you look at what Eurovision is now, I think that all started with ABBA's performance. It made people think this is much more than just a song contest. It's all about the look. I mean, the clothes, they looked fantastic. And even the composer, or not the composer, what's he called? The conductor. He was dressed as Napoleon. It made it fun. Fantastic song, obviously. Brilliant singing. But the whole look of it just changed the way that Eurovision is, and to this day.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 4:25. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Let's get more now to reaction of the dramatic events in Brussels, because police are attempting to shut down an event to which Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman are addressing. It came after a local mayor said it was for public order reasons. And you can see live pictures on your screen now. They are now donning their riot helmets. They are getting more tooled up than earlier on before. We spoke to a reporter earlier outside there. Confusion. There's not much happening, but the police seem to think something could happen. And I'm joined now by Jack Parrock, a journalist in Brussels, of course, is a regular on the show. Jack, whatever you think about what's going on in that room, whatever you think about politics, wherever you stand on the spectrum, this is an extraordinary politicisation of the police, isn't it?
Personally, I'd put it down as a bit of a farce today, to be honest with you, Martin. I think this is a comedy of errors. Your earlier speaker was talking about the mayor that has shut this down. He is the mayor of Saint-Josse, which is one of the 19 communes of Brussels. So there is no sort of overarching mayor of Brussels. They each have their own sort of fiefdom here, a bit like the London boroughs. But without the Sadiq Khan figure over the top of them. So he's shut it down, as you say, on the reasons of public order. He has been backed up by some of the other mayors as well. It does certainly seem like a bit of an extreme reaction to something that happens quite regularly here in Brussels. As you can imagine, there are frequently different political gatherings from different political factions and leanings. Their reasons, as you said, is for public order. There was expected to be a counter-protest. This has taken a big load of impact in the UK because of the attendance of the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman and of Nigel Farage as well. I was on the phone actually to an EU source earlier today who did say something quite funny to me. They said, why are the Brits coming back here? Why are they doing this? Why was this event held here? They could have done it anywhere else in Europe. But they chose to come to Brussels, and now we're in this situation with police in riot gear outside the event. I'm pretty sure it will just be cancelled now. And now we're having these big discussions, as you heard before, about human rights. I mean, I would say the sort of pearl clutching and the jaws on the floor and the overblasted reaction to this is probably maybe a little bit much. It is just a political conference that's been shut down. But you then wonder why this had happened. Why would they have bothered to do this there in the first place? There was a number of changes of venue. They knew that this was going to be difficult. And frankly, had it not have been shut down, this conference would have passed through with very little attention. And now here we are spending all the day talking about it. The British press is up in arms. People from across the political spectrum talking about it. As I said, it feels like a bit of a comedy of errors, a bit of a farce to the people that live here in Brussels today.
I wonder, Jack, if it is so easy to brush off like that, because you are right, there are all sorts of political gatherings and associations across Brussels. One of them was last June, when Ali Reza Zakani, the ultra-radical mayor of Tehran, appeared with the mayor of Brussels, Philippe Close. Didn't seem to have any problems with that. And that makes you take away the message, Jack, that this does seem to be a targeted response. And, you know, Nigel Farage and people in there are well known for being Eurosceptic. In fact, it's cited in the dispersal order that they are Eurosceptic. So this does appear to be a weaponisation of the police forces when the politics don't suit Brussels.
Well, this is exactly the question, to be honest with you, Martin. Brussels is a city of diplomacy. People come in from across the board, different political factions, different countries, different, all over the world. People that we don't like have to come to Brussels to negotiate with the European Union, whether that's on issues of peace agreements, whether it's trade, whether it's different aspects of diplomacy. This is a city where people come together and have those kind of discussions. Ordinarily backdoor discussions, to be fair. This one was a convention, a conference for hard-right conservative politicians to come together and try and make their points today. As I say, it could have very easily been allowed to continue and would have passed off without too much attention. Therefore, the questions are raised. Why did this happen? And also, it comes down to the question of why was it chosen as a location by the organisers when they knew there was quite a lot of contention and they knew it would get this kind of media attention if it were to be shut down, as the mayor was threatening to do. We now know this is the case. You can see on your screen there's this live video of the police officers stood outside. It all feels a bit overinflated at the moment. We'll have to wait and see what happens. We'll have to wait and see what sort of implications this will have as well going forward. You would assume that if you try to organise a conference like this in a city like Brussels, other politicians from this political leaning would come regularly. France's Marine Le Pen is always in Brussels. There are numerous figures from across the political spectrum on that side who are constantly coming here. They may be reluctant to bring their conferences like this in the future. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, maybe they'll deliberately go there to see if the authorities do the same. Jack Parrock, our man in Brussels, thanks for joining us on the show. And I'm joined in our studio by Chris Hope. Chris, you just come from a lobby meeting over at Downing Street. What are they saying over there about this situation?
OK, so on the record now from the Prime Minister's deputy official spokesman, the mouthpiece of Rishi Sunak, his views. She says clearly these reports on GB News and elsewhere are extremely disturbing. The Prime Minister is a strong supporter and advocate of free speech and believes it's fundamental to any democracy. Speaking more broadly to the principle of such events, he's very clear that cancelling events or preventing attendance and no platforming of speakers is damaging to democracy as a result. Free debate and exchange of views is vital, even when we disagree. So he's saying, what on earth are they doing in Brussels?
Indeed, that's the question on everybody's lips. Thank you, Chris Hope, for that update from Number 10. And we'll have loads more on that story, of course, between now and 5 o'clock, including all of that latest from the Bedlam in Brussels. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
The top story this hour, Downing Street says the attempt by police in Brussels to shut down the National Conservatism Conference there is extremely disturbing. Officers arrived while GB News presenter Nigel Farage was addressing the event, giving attendees 15 minutes to leave the venue. It's understood the order came from the local mayor, Emir Keir, who said it was to guarantee public safety. Organisers are now saying the event will continue for as long as it can, but delegates have been encouraged not to leave because police won't let them back in. Also in the news today, a High Court ruling dismissing a Muslim student's challenge against her school's prayer ban has been described as a victory for all schools. The student argued the policy at Michaela Community School was discriminatory and breached her right to religious freedom. However, head teacher Catherine Birbal-Singh said schools should not be forced to change their approach simply because a child or parent decide they don't like something. And Labour's promised to protect family finances after a reported spike in repossessed homes after the mini-budget. The party's new analysis shows the number of families at risk of losing their home jumped 46% as a result of Liz Truss's mini-budget and soaring mortgages. Meanwhile, more than 16,000 repossession claims were made last year, up from just over 11,300 in the previous year. And the social media platform X is planning to start charging all new users a small fee to interact with posts. The site's owner, Elon Musk, says charging new users to like and reply to tweets is the only way to stop what he described as the relentless onslaught of bots and fake accounts. Last year, a pilot scheme was launched in New Zealand and the Philippines, which charged a $1 a year subscription. It's reported the trial will now be rolled out more widely. For the very latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Now, in a few minutes, I'll be speaking to a member of the European Parliament who was at that NatsCon event when it got closed down by cops. Don't go anywhere.
The latest GB News travel. Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Eastbound M62 Birchwood to the Eccles interchange. That's junction 11 towards 12. There's a breakdown blocking lane 1 and it's causing delays. Antrim, Northern Ireland, a couple of issues. Firstly, northbound side of the Ballymena Road, the A26 is closed from the A6 to Dublin Road. Heading north up towards Spring Farm Road and queuing. There's been a collision. Then away from Belfast, the out of town Westlink, the A12. We've currently got a lane shut away from the A2 for a breakdown causing delays. Sandygate in Devon, the southbound A380 closed in the roadworks for investigation work no way through between the King Stainton turnoff and the Ware Barton roundabout. That's causing delays. And Pickett Post in Hampshire, eastbound A31 from the services towards Stoney Cross, a lane shut in queues. There's an overturned vehicle. And that's your latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
There is a kind of a Mediterranean side to that as well, because my mother came from that side, you know, a big family. And I think there is that sense of community where family is kind of key. And I think that's really kind of what we sort of try and continue, really. I mean, certainly with children and stuff like that, you know, Sunday lunches were always, you know, the big thing.
Yeah,
really.
But if you go down the Old Kent Road today...
Very different. Very different, yeah. And that was quite some time ago as well, because we were very close to where the Thomas Becket was.
Yeah, I know. The boxing upstairs and all the rest of it. Yep.
And I did go down there not so long ago, actually, and it really is very, very different. I mean, I'm not saying that's necessarily bad. I think we have a different view of things.
Most people in London, Nicky, don't even know the names of the next-door neighbours.
No, true.
We've completely lost that sense of community that you grew up with, that you knew. I think it's a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say sometimes I'm a bit guilty of it where I am now as well. You live in big houses, and I do see my neighbours, but, you know, it's not quite the same as it was back.
And I guess from that background, you were a teenager, you want to become a hairdresser.
Yeah,
that must have been quite a difficult call.
Yeah, that one was a really good call. My dad went, oh, God, what? I mean, it was just very funny. And certainly from the point of view of, you know, this was the early 70s. And so it wasn't really the kind of the choice of most people would do.
No, but you did. Why?
I don't know, actually. I mean, I went to a grammar school and I didn't do as well in the final exams, and I was kind of forced into sort of leaving. And you suddenly go, ooh, no idea what to do here, really. Yeah. But the idea of doing something in fashion. And, you know, I really kind of... I know that I was given some really good advice, actually, by somebody that said, just start at the bottom. Don't necessarily go to, you know, college or whatever. There may not be anything wrong with those, but just start at the bottom. Go to the best place you can and start sweeping the floor.
Welcome back, 4:37. Let's get more reaction to those dramatic events in Brussels and speak now with someone who was at the event and is also a member of the European Parliament, and that's Mr. Tom van den Driesen, who joins me now. Welcome to the show, Tom. So I understand you were at the event this morning. Tell me, what happened?
Well, I was invited by NatCom to give a lecture on the future of Europe. And our vision of Europe, of the European cooperation, is one between sovereign nation states. And we think there's a threat of an ever closer union. And this is the opposing view, which is the Euro-federalist view.
And at that point, the police arrived and described the scenes.
Well, it was after I gave my lecture, so I was attending and listening to other people speaking, and I saw the police just coming in, and there were all kinds of rumors about the actions of the socialist mayor of Brussels, and they just came in, they gave the order of the mayor, and then they left. But suddenly the whole meeting room was sealed off, so nobody could come in anymore. And if you left, you could not re-enter the venue.
So this sounds like a sort of siege. The police were ring-fencing the area. They weren't letting anybody in. I understand it as well, Tom, that no food or drink made it in because the caterers were targeted.
Yeah, probably our human rights are being violated, but I'm not sure about that. Now, what they are trying to do, they try to intimidate people of using their constitutional right to have meetings, to have their freedom of speech, to use their constitutional rights. And this is not the first time they have done this. The socialist mayors here in Brussels, they just deny people with opposing views to exercise their constitutional rights. My party, for example, which is the Vlaams Belang Party, the conservative and patriotic party here in Belgium, the largest party in every poll since 2019. Well, last year we did a meeting here in Brussels and exactly the same happened. You have left-wing anti-fascist mobs threatening with violence. Then you have the socialist mayors, which are then declared as an emergency, and they need to safeguard the public order. And then they cancel your meeting. You need to go to the highest administrative court here in Belgium to get a permit to do anything they don't like.
Interesting, Tom. The dispersal notice served by the mayor is extraordinary. It says today there would undeniably have been the risk of disruption and violence, but outside on the streets it paints a very different picture, one of calmness. But Tom, in particular, there are special words reserved for attendees, and that obviously includes yourself. People inside reputed to be traditionalists, as if that's an insult, homophobes, disrespectful of human rights and minorities. And we could also cite an author of controversial works on political Islam. Tom, this letter is putting the boot into you, everybody inside, in an extraordinary manner. How do you react to those allegations?
Well, these allegations are completely false. We just have an opposing view on the future of Europe. We have an opposing view on imposing woke ideologies or imposing gender ideology to little children in schools, for example. This is legitimate. In a democracy, you can have opposing views and express them. So this is just slander. It's absolutely not correct. We are freedom-loving, conservatives and patriots.
And Tom, of course, you alluded to the fact we have forthcoming elections all across the 27 member states. The bedlam in Brussels today, do you think this will help the European Union? Do you think it will help the Eurozone and the pro-EU idealists? Or do you think it might make those who are Eurosceptical think something fishy is going on here? This looks very authoritarian.
Well, it is indeed very interesting that the rest of the world now discovers how Belgium really functions. And you have people like Guy Verhofstadt, for example, the former Liberal Prime Minister. Well, actually, the current Prime Minister is also of his Liberal Party. His party is, by the way, the 7th largest party here in Belgium. He is polling at 7%, so everybody wants him out. So these people who are lecturing everybody in the world, and countries like Hungary in particular, that they need to respect the rule of law, that they need to respect freedom of press and so on. Well, now the whole world has seen what kind of a banana republic Belgium actually is. And to us Flemish, it's not a surprise. We are experiencing this for decades.
And Tom van den Driessen, before I let you go, I spoke to a lawyer earlier who said they are going to challenge this. A human rights lawyer in Brussels outside the event said they're going to appeal against this clampdown. Do you think that will happen? Do you think the event will continue tomorrow? Or do you think they've managed to close this event down now?
If they go to court, and we have done this in the past on numerous occasions, the judges will say that they are right to have this event, and the decree of the mayor is an illegal decree. They are just misusing their power to silence the opposition.
Tom van den Driessen, superb, insightful account. He was at this event earlier, the Conservative event in Brussels. Fascinating insight into what happened there. Now, still to come, Westminster City Council has been slammed for offering new citizens an option to not shake hands with the opposite sex at their citizenship ceremony. What do you make of that? We'll be discussing it after this. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office. It's a bright day out there, some sunny spells even, but it's still blustery. There are still showers coming through. High pressure, tantalisingly close, but we're going to have to wait a few more days for that to arrive. For the time being, we've got low pressure to the north and to the east, bringing this cool northerly airflow and bringing further showers in the airflow. Now, the showers overnight become more confined to the north of Scotland, where they'll be frequent and prolonged. Eastern England as well, and a few toppling into Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and Western England. In between, plenty of clear spells, and with lighter winds, it's going to be a bit chillier as we begin Wednesday. Certainly a fresh start out there, but a bright start. Some long spells of sunshine for Western Scotland, Southern Scotland, parts of England and Wales as well. Now, we're going to see further showers coming to the north and east of Scotland, as well as parts of eastern England. It'll be fewer, I think, compared with Tuesday. And we're going to see the cloud thicken for Northern Ireland with outbreaks of rain. Feeling quite cool here, 7 Celsius. Otherwise, where we do get lengthy, clear and drier weather across central parts, 12 or 13 Celsius. So a cool day, but feeling pleasant where we've got the dry and bright weather. And a bright start to Thursday. Again, a chilly start to the day for many, but we're going to see cloud and rain spread into northern parts of the country. That will spread south during Friday, clearing to sunny skies at the weekend.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:47. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Ministers have withdrawn funding for a scheme to tackle air pollution. Councils had been promised around £6 million this year to help people limit their exposure to dangerously polluted air. But in the last-minute change, the Air Quality Minister, Robbie Moore, told them he was withholding those funds. Let's now talk to meteorologist Jim Dale. Jim, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure. So this fund has been running since 1997. About 90 million quid has been given out. But for this time, this year, for the first time, it's been pulled. What's your take on that?
You wonder why, don't you, Martin? 6 to 7 million people estimated to die from air pollution throughout the world. Many of them not in the UK, obviously, but a few would be. That money was there to advise, it was there to prevent air pollution. 99% of us globally are affected by in some shape or form by air pollution at some point in the year. Most of it is invisible, as we know, but it's there, and you wonder why, and I'll give you the answer why. This is chasing red wall voters, in my view, and they're not going to take it. Put your hand up if you want more pollution. Put your hand up if you want to be advised about pollution. Put your hand up if you want your child to be exposed to pollution. You know, this is a no-brainer, but I don't know which brain they're using in terms of going in this direction and restricting that money for something that is extremely useful for people. When I say useful, medically useful, and also climate useful in terms of that side of things. So it's got multi-uses, and I don't understand he can't call himself the Air Quality Minister with this sort of decision. It's completely the opposite.
Well, Jim, the data given is there's already been a reduction in air quality since 2010, a consistent improvement in air quality, particularly in London. There's been a 24% decrease in particulate matter, 48% decrease in nitrogen oxides. Worth pointing out, not a single death has been directly attributed to vehicle pollution, let alone air pollution. So the thinking behind this is that the background pollution rates are falling quickly thanks to increased burning, thanks to increased awareness and schemes to drive motorists away from using polluting cars. And so the work has been done. One of these schemes, Jim, was for a Greater London council who wanted £1 million to put pollution sensors on school children's backpacks.
Great idea. I don't know why not. Look, the direction of travel is the right direction. It doesn't mean that we suddenly stop. I mean, there are, for example, candidates in the mayor election in London who advocate almost the opposite. The squashing of ULEZ, for example, speeding up cars, for example.
Jim, let's not get into any ongoing elections, please. Let's not get into any ongoing elections. Let's keep this on the scheme itself, the funding. Is it a good idea or not? The rationale is the pollution is falling already.
Yeah, but it hasn't fallen to zero. This is my point. We only, if you walk down the Marylebone Road, you're going to feel it by the end of the day if you stay there for long enough. It's still there. We still need that advice. I started in this interview by saying 6 to 7 million people die every year. And whilst in Britain, pollution deaths are not necessarily car deaths, are not written on the death certificate. It's what's behind that. You ask surgeons, doctors, these type of things. And generally speaking, it is the pollutants from cars and industrial outputs that actually put people in hospital. Not just that they die, but they get exposed to diseases that they have for the rest of their lives. So this is a bit strange because it's on the day that the smoking ban is being almost, I say ban going forward, because it will be a ban in the end, which is a great thing. But this is juxtaposition. This is like the opposite. And you wonder why. And I come to the fact that it's got to be calculated, that it's something to do with the general election in the future. And that's what it's about. They think there's votes in it. I don't think so.
OK, Jim Dale, thanks for your input. Of course, they would say it's based on evidence and it's based on financial prudence, but we must move on. Because Westminster City Council has been slammed for offering new citizens an option to not shake hands with the opposite sex at their citizenship ceremony. The Central London Council offers an option for new British citizens to say whether they would like to shake hands with a dignitary, and it seems they can change their answer depending on whether that dignitary is a man or a woman. Well, I'm joined now in our Westminster studio by Sir John Hayes, Conservative MP for South Holland and the Deeping. Thanks for your company today in the studio. What's your take on this? Because a standard part of this citizenship is it's considered British to shake hands with anybody who offers it, but yet there seems to be something else afoot in Westminster.
Well, it's bizarre, isn't it? It sounds to me like either a nonsensical oversight or something more sinister. Shaking hands is the customary way in which we, as a matter of courtesy, introduce ourselves to another individual, make a connection with someone. And actually, it's slightly more than that, isn't it? It's a gesture which suggests fellowship. Now, if citizenship isn't about fellowship, what is it about?
Do you think there may be a faith-based aspect to this? Many Muslim people believe that physical contact between the opposite sex is unnecessary, it's discouraged, and for some, even prohibited. And similar views are held amongst the Orthodox Jewish community. Is this new take catering for that, rather than having a centralised view of what it means to be British?
Well, I think that's a question you'd have to put to Westminster City Council. I don't know what their motive was, but shaking hands is long been seen across people of all kinds and types as a way of bonding, of connecting, of showing that you respect the other person, that they respect you. This is a mutual thing. There's a reciprocity about it. And as I say, it's customary, it's British, and the civilities and courtesies which comprise our social norms matter, particularly for someone who's becoming a British citizen.
But if it's British and if it's something that binds us, then why shouldn't everybody in Britain have to partake in this custom? Why do some people get an opt-out?
Well, it shouldn't be obligatory in the sense that I'm not obliged to shake hands with you. If I choose not to create that kind of connection, then that's down to me. And you'll know that famously, when someone offers their hand and it's rejected, and this is, this has happened formally and officially and occasionally publicly, then it's seen as a sort of rebuttal, a rebuff, isn't it? He refused to shake hands with X or Y is seen as something quite significant. But in the normal course of events, this is a dignitary welcoming someone to this country and celebrating their citizenship in a normal, quiet celebration of someone's Britishness. My goodness, surely we should shake hands.
Well, on that point, Sir John Hayes, I think we should do precisely that.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us in the studio. Fascinating debate, and a spokesperson for Westminster City Council has said this: as part of our citizenship ceremony service, we offer a range of options to ensure we cater to everyone, including faith and cultural groups and people with health conditions and disabilities. Well, we'll be discussing all the very latest on the bedlam in Brussels after your weather with Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office. It's a bright day out there, some sunny spells even, but it's still blustery. There are still showers coming through. High pressure, tantalisingly close, but we're going to have to wait a few more days for that to arrive. For the time being, we've got low pressure to the north and to the east, bringing this cool northerly airflow and bringing further showers in the airflow. Now, the showers overnight become more confined to the north of Scotland, where they'll be frequent and prolonged. Eastern England as well, and a few toppling into Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and Western England. In between, plenty of clear spells, and with lighter winds, it's going to be a bit chillier as we begin Wednesday. Certainly a fresh start out there, but a bright start. Some long spells of sunshine for Western Scotland, Southern Scotland, parts of England and Wales as well. Now, we're going to see further showers coming to the north and east of Scotland, as well as parts of eastern England. There'll be fewer, I think, compared with Tuesday. And we're going to see the cloud thicken for Northern Ireland with outbreaks of rain. Feeling quite cool here, 7 Celsius. Otherwise, where we do get lengthy, clear and drier weather across central parts, 12 or 13 Celsius. So a cool day, but feeling pleasant where we've got the dry and bright weather. And a bright start to Thursday. Again, a chilly start to the day for many, but we're going to see cloud and rain spread into northern parts of the country. That will spread south during Friday, clearing to sunny skies at the weekend.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Newcastle. Firstly, the northbound A1 at junction 74th part block queuing back to the Metro Centre at 71 for a collision there. Southbound side of the M6, Sandbach through 17, down towards Stoke at 16. Lane 1's comed off, a breakdown causing delays. The Lincoln bypass, the A46, that's closed both ways between the Skellingthorpe roundabout and the Doddington roundabout, and queuing. There's been a multi-vehicle collision. Berkshire, the westbound M4, Chieveley Newbury at 13 to Hungerford at 14. A lane shutter collision there continues to cause delays. And in Hampshire, Picket Post, eastbound A31 from the services through towards Stoney Cross is queuing. There's a lane shut. An overturned vehicle on that stretch continues to cause delays. And for now, that's your latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster all across the UK. Today, police in Brussels are attempting to shut down the National Conservatism Conference, gagging Nigel Farage, Suella Braverman and Viktor Orban. We'll be live from the venue for a frontline account of the bedlam in Brussels. And a London headmistress who has won the right to ban a Muslim pupil from praying has called the High Court ruling a victory for all schools, where we finally see an end to religious extremists meddling with British schools. And today, the government faces yet another revolt, this time over its plan to ban teenagers from smoking for life. We'll be live direct from the Commons on this. Is this clampdown sensible or a slippery slope on the path to Puritanism? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Welcome to the show. An absolute delight to have your company. Astonishing scenes today from Brussels. Bedlam in Brussels, an event with Nigel Farage speaking. The National Conservatism Conference shut down by police after the mayor issued an order to have it clamped down. We've just been reading that order out, accusing people inside of being homophobes, traditionalists, whatever that means, and having extreme views. Also saying it would certainly lead to public unrest. That didn't happen. It's still been closed down. We spoke to an MEP who was in there saying it was absolute chaos. We spoke to a human rights lawyer who he believes certainly the actions of the mayor may have contravened the European Court of Human Rights in Brussels on Nigel Farage and people from the political right. An astonishing story. Hundreds of you have been in touch with your comments so far. Please keep sending those views in. I'll read a load of them out before the end of the show. There's a new way to get in touch. Send your views and post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Get stuck in. Leave your comments. I'll read out the best before the end of the show. But let's crack on with your next hour. But before that, it's time for your latest news headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
Martin, thank you. Good evening. Downing Street says the attempt by police in Brussels to shut down the National Conservatism Conference is extremely disturbing. Officers arrived while Nigel Farage was addressing the event, giving everyone 15 minutes to leave the venue. It's understood the order came from the local Brussels mayor, Emir Keir, in a move he said was to guarantee public safety. Organisers say the event will continue for as long as it can, but delegates have been encouraged not to leave because police won't let them back in. The former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, spoke to Nigel Farage after her own speech at the conference.
Thankfully, you and I got to make our speeches in favour of controlling our borders and protecting our communities amongst like-minded Democrats. Many of us there are democratically elected politicians. Many of us are leaders in our field, academics, thinkers, writers, and it's frankly staggering. The mayor of Brussels has deployed his thought police to cancel what is a peaceful event focused on how we can better represent the millions of people around the European continent.
Labour's Wes Streeting poked fun at Suella Braverman's absence from the Commons.
Right, Honourable Member for Fareham, who couldn't be here today with us, Mr Deputy Speaker, because she's currently in Brussels, surrounded by the police who are trying to shut down the event she's attended with some far-right fanatics with whom she has much in common.
Now, the Rwanda bill is back in the House of Lords tonight after MPs rejected a series of amendments they suggested, with some Conservatives calling the proposals ridiculous. Let's take a look at live pictures coming to us from the upper chamber. The Lords maintaining their standoff with the government on its flagship migration policy. They're demanding Rishi Sunak's deportation plan ensures due regard for human rights and modern slavery concerns. Downing Street is hoping to clear the final hurdle this week and get flights off the ground within weeks, but Labour has insisted the scheme is doomed to fail. In other news today, Policing Minister Chris Philp says new powers for chief constables to sack rogue officers will root out those unfit to wear the badge. Under the new powers, chief constables will be put in charge of misconduct hearings, making it easier to remove officers in their own force who are found guilty. The changes, which come into force next month, follows a review into police dismissals after the conviction of David Carrick for multiple sex offences while serving as a police officer. A High Court ruling dismissing a Muslim student's challenge against her school's prayer ban has been described as a victory for all schools. The student argued the policy at Michaela Community School was discriminatory and breached her right to religious freedom. However, head teacher Catherine Birbal-Singh said schools shouldn't be forced to change their approach simply because a child or parent decides it's something they don't like. The judge upheld that position, highlighting safety concerns at the school. The students' legal team expressed their disappointment, saying it's important to promote religious freedoms in educational settings. The Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, has denied that a ban on tobacco and vape sales will cause a black market boom. If you're watching on television, here's a quick look inside the Commons, who are also busy today. They're discussing the tobacco and vapes bill that's being brought before MPs for the first time. If it becomes law, it would be an offence to sell tobacco products to anyone born after the 1st of January 2009. And Downing Street has denied that the UK is being taken for granted by Israel, as time still hasn't been found for a call between Rishi Sunak and Benjamin Netanyahu. The Prime Minister and his Israeli counterpart are due to talk about a de-escalation of hostilities with Iran, amid concerns the crisis could escalate. Israel has confirmed their war cabinet is meeting today to discuss their response to Iran's missile and drone attack over the weekend. Iran's president has said even the smallest action against his country will be met with, quotes, a severe, widespread and painful response. Quick word about the weather overseas now. If you're looking for a sunny pre-summer getaway to Dubai, well, extreme weather conditions may dampen those plans. Take a look at these pictures if you're watching on television. The desert city's usually blue and cloudless skies have been hit by torrential rain and thunderstorms as the authorities there advise people to stay home. Videos showed cars swamped in water, waves buffeting traffic and roads brought to a standstill. And we've just heard Dubai Airport says it's temporarily diverting flights this evening until those weather conditions improve. Forecasters saying, though, another wave of unstable weather is expected tomorrow morning. Not just us, then. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Polly. Great stuff. Now, Downing Street says the attempt by police in Brussels to shut down the National Conservatism Conference is extremely disturbing. Nigel Farage was speaking at the conference when the order to shut it down came from local Brussels Mayor Emir Keir in a move he said was to guarantee public safety. Well, we can now speak with the Director of Case Operations at the Free Speech Union, Benjamin Jones. Benjamin, welcome to the show. Astonishing scene. Suella Braverman can't believe her eyes, neither can Nigel Farage. We spoke to a Flemish MEP who was at the event. He said this kind of thing happens routinely in Brussels. The police often close down political gatherings of people they disagree with. We also spoke with a barrister, Benjamin, who he says what happened today could have contravened European Court of Human Rights freedom of expression rules. Whatever you take away from this, Benjamin, it's a day of absolute and utter bedlam in Brussels.
Shocking and completely farcical. But I'll tell you who it didn't happen to, which was the mayor of Tehran, who was welcomed last year without incident. So the fact that politicians from the right and centre-right in Europe, Nigel Farage, Miriam Cates, Viktor Orban and so on, academics, thought leaders in their field, can't meet in Brussels without the police effectively raiding the conference and trying to blockade it. It's just utterly astonishing. Before I came on, I just had a chance to read an English translation of the order given by the mayor to the police force. And in that, he said that there was no time for a risk assessment about the event. He said that it would be a disturbance to the peace because of its, and I quote, discriminatory nature. And because some of the attendees were traditionalists and, quote, disrespectful of human rights. Well, what about the right to freedom of speech, to freedom of assembly, to freedom of conscience? This is the rank authoritarianism of a crummy student union. It's astonishing.
And Benjamin, you're quite right to bring up the attendance of Ali Reza Zaghani, the mayor of Tehran, at an event last June. He appeared with the mayor of Brussels, and when he was asked about that, this is the guy, by the way, who's been sanctioned by the European Union. His views are so extreme for serious human rights violations. He said this: just because certain people are present doesn't mean we have to agree with them. Well, how come it works one way but not the other? The clear takeaway from this, Benjamin, appears to be that the police have been politicised.
I think that's clear. I'd also say it's very disturbing, although it's routine in other countries for police to carry firearms. It does appear extremely disturbing from a British point of view to see a meeting of effectively opposition or opposing politicians to be blockaded by armed police. Are utterly astonishing, almost incomprehensible scenes. It's incredible that this has been allowed to happen. One of the things that's disturbed me most about it, though, I have to say, took place not in Brussels, but in the House of Commons early this afternoon, where Wes Street and the Labour front bench appeared to be making light of this whole situation, to be joking about it, to be laughing at what was happening. And I think that shows us, I'm afraid, what the view towards freedom of speech might well be under a Labour government. I wouldn't find it a matter of amusement if a Labour Party event or a Labour conference were being disrupted by police. I think that would be an astonishing and shocking infringement on their rights. But I do expect that there should be some principled consistency in defending freedom of speech for people who don't agree with you. And as we've seen, that has been sorely lacking.
And isn't that the point, Benjamin? We can't have this idea of one rule for me and one rule for thee. And there's a clear distinction between free speech and defamation. Some of the words you mentioned in that mayoral dispersion order, traditionalists, well, what does that mean? Presumably it's a crime to agree with traditional family values, but it specifically says homophobes were present in that event, those who are disrespectful of human rights, and minorities, which is shorthand for you're a racist. And we can also cite an author of controversial works on political Islam. Now, this is a mayor of a municipal city saying this about, what, all of the attendees inside. Benjamin, is that free speech? Is that allowable, or is that something different? Is that somebody in authority casting dispersions in a way that's damaging to the reputation of people involved in this event inside?
As far as I'm concerned, look, he's a socialist. He can say whatever he wants to about the political views of the people at this conference. He can disparage them. He can criticise their views. He can mock them. He can hate them. That's fine. What he can't do, or rather what he should not be allowed to do, is use the power of the state, the power of the police, to disrupt meetings of people whose views he doesn't like.
Fantastic stuff. Thanks for joining us. That's Benjamin Jones, the Director of Case Operations at the Free Speech Union. Fascinating stuff. What a day it's been. But there's been some other news, believe it or not. And in that other news, Rishi Sunak is facing the prospect of a major backbench rebellion over his plans to ban smoking for all of those born after January the 1st, 2009, with many Conservative MPs angry of what they say is an attack on personal liberties. Well, let's speak now with our political editor, Christopher Hope, who is inside the Commons there. Well, yeah, you're inside the Commons. Chris, so as I understand it, there's been a lot of flack towards the Prime Minister today from his own MPs. What's the latest?
Yeah, there's a debate all day today in the House of Commons. It's a free vote of Tory MP, all MPs in fact, on this Rishi Sunak plan set out at the party conference last year to ban smoking for anyone aged 15 or under. The smoking ban age will increase over decades until we are a smoke-free nation. That's the idea, but it's caused some havoc in the chamber of the House of Commons. Tory MPs, Tory right-wingers are very upset about what they see as an attempt to control the freedom to smoke, even though, of course, it may put a cost onto us all through NHS care, but equally they do pay their taxes, smokers, don't they? One of those who has said, and others have said in the chamber, that this effectively infantilises people, treats them like children rather than adults. One MP concerned about it, who's made 3 interventions so far, is Andrew Rosendahl, who's the MP for Romford. Mr. Rosendahl, thank you for joining us today on GB News. What have you been saying in the chamber?
Look, none of us want young people to smoke. It's not a good thing. No parents want their kids to start smoking at an early age. But we live in a free society, and the best way of dealing with these things is for people to understand the implications but then make their own choice. It's not for the government to start dictating to people how they live their lives. You could finish up banning all kinds of things. It's not the Conservative way, and Liz Truss was absolutely right. This is nanny state. This is government interfering in people's lives. By all means, educate people about the effects of all kinds of things, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's fatty foods, whether it's anything you do in life that you enjoy which may not be good for you, but let people choose. Surely that's what the Conservative Party should stand for, freedom of choice.
So your party is instead banning cigarette smoking for anyone 15 and under. Why is it doing this?
I don't really know, because actually the amount of very young people now starting to smoke at early ages has dropped dramatically. I was told in the chamber, several MPs mentioned it's gone down to 1%. It's a tiny amount, so evolution is the answer. Gradually it may well die out. It may become a thing of the past, but that should happen naturally. It's not for the government to start banning things at this stage. It's not worked in New Zealand. They tried it there and it fell apart. It didn't happen. We're making the same mistake. I suspect, Chris, that civil servants are behind this. I suspect that it's been put on the desk of ministers and they decided to run with it, but I suspect it's come from the civil servants. I think, frankly, our government has better things to do at this time. There's more important legislation to pass.
Is it legacy planning by the Prime Minister? He looks like he might lose the election when it comes later in the year, probably the autumn, and then he's out. But he can say, well, I did make Britain a smoke-free nation.
It could well be. I don't know. I can't speak for the Prime Minister. What I would say to the Prime Minister is that the British people voted for a Conservative government with an 80-seat majority, and they want Conservative policies. I'd much rather see legislation be introduced to deal with the transgender problem following the Cass report. I'd much rather see legislation to deal with immigration, because it's got out of control and the British public are angry about it, or crime. There are bigger issues to deal with. Banning smoking at this stage is really not what we should be doing.
And was not in the manifesto voted on by people in their millions in 2019.
No, it wasn't. But then I suppose we could say, if you're bringing this in that wasn't in the manifesto, maybe we can bring in legislation to come out of the ECHR, because that wasn't in the manifesto either, but I'd like to do that.
You never miss a trick, Andrew Rosendahl. Quickly to ask you about this NatCon event in Brussels. I know you've been in the chamber all afternoon, but in summary, Nigel Farage spoke there, Miriam Cates, Suella Braverman, but the police have been trying to shut it down on the orders of the mayor. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it's outrageous. It's a disgrace. Freedom of speech is something that we uphold. I have attended many international Conservative conferences over the years. I used to be chairman of the European Young Conservatives and the International Young Democrat Union, global conservative network of right-of-centre parties. There's always going to be people there that you disagree with, but it's about freedom of speech and dialogue and debate and looking at the issues and coming up with new vibrant policies, working with people of like mind. Nothing wrong with that. Surely, if we can't have freedom of speech, we are in big trouble in this country.
And just finally, votes tomorrow in the Commons, because some of those amendments are being made by the House of Lords to the Rwanda bill. What will happen tomorrow?
Well, I don't know. I hope the House of Lords will realise that they don't have a mandate to block the elected House of Commons on this issue. We've heard their views, always respect the views of the House of Lords, but they're wrong on this issue. The British people want to see the illegal boats stopped, and the way to do it is to have a third place to send people to deter more illegal boats from coming over.
Well, Andrew Rosnell, thank you for joining us on GB News. Andrew Rosnell there, concerned about the Rwanda boats policy might be law by Thursday, Martin, and very concerned about the ban on cigarette smoking, but backing the PM on his concern about this NatCon event in Brussels being attempted to be called off by the Mayor.
Thank you, Chris Hope, live there from Westminster Hall. I've got a quick couple of emails to read out from you on this precise topic. And Chris said this: we should see what's happened in Brussels today as a victory for democracy and an own goal by the EU and their interfering mayor. Rebecca says this: you don't have to agree with someone's ideology to see how wrong it is to close down political debates and freedom of speech. Just because you don't agree with someone's position shouldn't mean that you can shut them down, because if you agree with that, sooner or later they'll close down everyone that you agree with too. And finally, Jeffrey says this: whoever instructed that mayor of Brussels has made a huge mistake. This event would have got little or no airtime, but now the EU's anti-democratic and anti-free speech views are in plain sight, and it's got people interested in what Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman has got to say all around the world. Well, you get lots more on that story on our website, and thanks to you, GBNews.com is the fastest growing national news website in the country. It's got breaking news and all of the brilliant analysis you've come to expect from GB News, so get clicking. Now, there's still plenty of time to grab your chance to win a Greek cruise, travel goodies, and 10 grand in tax-free cold hard cash to boost your bank balance. And here's all the details that you need to hop on board.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest prize so far. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Get stuck in, and please stay with us because we'll be keeping you up to date on those astonishing events in Brussels. Live pictures on your screen now. You can see police are still attending that event now with their riot hats, which is considered a risk to public order, despite the fact there's been no public disorder going on. We've got a man on the ground. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Offline and overlooked. That's what Age UK say millions of British pensioners are. Why? Because they cannot or won't access the internet. It's leading to digital exclusion. So the charities campaigning for public services like banks, utilities and even the NHS to maintain a more human approach.
Everything's online. People assume you've got a smartphone with a mobile number and an email, and without that you don't exist in this world anymore. We've got to try and get the government to see that it's so important to make people feel that they belong, because there's a feeling that the older generation just feel that they're forgotten, they're in the way, and we already know that anyway, but it's just another reason for them to feel that they're not wanted. They'll just accept it and they'll say, well, that's it, I can't do it anymore. And that's it, whereas other people would be really kicking and screaming. So we need to be the voice for older people.
Despite digital technology playing an increasing role in our lives, around 1 in 5 over 65s in the UK don't use the internet. Thornycroft Centre in Pontefract, West Yorkshire, provides a space for this age group to socialise and get help to go online.
I'm not that good with mobiles, so when you mention anything about online, I ain't a clue what you're talking about.
The closure of thousands of banks is also detrimental to the older generation.
A lot of our members what come, they tend to use cash. They don't like to use bank cards. I think a lot of it's trust or the lack of knowledge. They don't understand how it works. I think they're very vulnerable as well with online. It's really important that they're aware how to use it and how to use it safely.
So, in an online era, it's still crucial for many to have an offline option.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Earlier on breakfast.
VAT is an immoral tax as well.
There's so many immoral taxes.
So you spend with so many immoral taxes. We are taxed to the hilt in this country. It is absolutely incredible. Maybe Liz Truss had a point.
I was going to say.
Maybe she did.
Using a real person's, face, and you're superimposing that and you're making it look incredibly realistic can cause actually catastrophic psychological harm.
The Conservative Party's got to do a lot more to learn from the impact, the awful impact of that Liz Truss period, particularly on family finances.
Just looking at the size of his hands. Look at all the size of my hands. I've got like really tiny. Show us your hands again, Pat. Let's.
Him and the silver taken up.
From 6, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back, it's 5:26. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, more reaction to police attempts to shut down a Conservative conference in Brussels, and these are live pictures from outside of the venue where Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman spoke earlier today. You can see that the police have their riot hats drawn. Now, I'm joined by the broadcaster Ajmal Masroor, who thinks that perhaps the shutdown was a good thing. Well, welcome to the show, Ajmal. Why do you think it was a good thing?
I never support shutting down free speech. I've always said we should have free speech allowed in every circumstances, unless, of course, it's being racist or inflammatory. Now, these two people have been known in our country to say inflammatory things, but more importantly, Suella Braverman, it wasn't that long ago. She was planning to shut down our right to freedom of speech and demonstration by calling our demonstration for the Palestinian people's right to exist as hate march. So maybe it would have been a good medicine to her for shutting down free speech in our country.
So do you think that elected representatives should be prevented from talking simply because you don't like their opinions? That sounds a bit authoritarian.
No, I don't, actually. I think they should be allowed. But what I'm saying is, Suella Braverman have been calling for shutting down of our democratic right to do demonstration or speak out freely for the rights of Palestinians to exist. When she does that, she forgets what goes around comes around. Now that she is getting the taste of her own medicine, she feels pretty threatened. And of course, she shouldn't be feeling threatened. She is an elected representative. She should have the right to speak freely. So as we are the voters, we should have the right to speak. We should have the right to demonstrate. And Suella Braverman should rethink her strategy when she starts screaming at those people who have been demonstrating peacefully in the streets of London for the Palestinians and their rights to exist.
Well, there also has been a 700% boom in anti-Semitism since October the 7th. There have been repeated offences carried out at these marches. I went to one myself where From the Rivers to the Sea, Palestine Will Be Free was projected onto Big Ben. I pointed that out to the police. They simply did nothing. That caused huge offence around the world. So it's not fair to say that these events are universally peaceful. But I want to talk to you, if I can, Jamal, about universality in terms of the application of whose right to free speech is shut down, because recently the mayor of Tehran was invited to Brussels, indeed by the mayor of Brussels, Alireza Zakani, an ultra-radical who's sanctioned by the EU for serious human rights violations. He was allowed to speak. So why, in that case, shouldn't Suella Braverman, Nigel Farage and people that Brussels disagree with not be allowed to speak?
Well, I'm not suggesting they should not be allowed to speak. And if you, of course, want to know the reasons why that particular mayor who decided that they should not speak, you should ask him. But from my perspective, as an individual living in the UK, I believe my right to freedom of speech, my right to freedom to demonstrate, my right to support the Palestinians to exist has been often criticized, vilified, and I've been called names. You know, I'm an imam of a mosque, and I go to at least 5 to 6 mosques across London where I lead prayers on a monthly rota. Our experience of anti-Semitism as well as Islamophobia has been equally awful and grotesque. We condemn all forms of racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. We stand together in fighting all forms of hatred. What I'm saying is there have been some individuals on prominent spaces, such as Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman, who have used their space and abused the space. And they've been peddling very serious, offensive, racist, Islamophobic rant and rhetoric. Nobody has challenged
Such as
them.
what?
They have been allowed to get away.
Such as what? If you're going to accuse a former Home Secretary of Islamophobia and racism, you need to be clear. Such as what?
I give you an example. She called the freedom to demonstrate, those of us who are demonstrating for the Palestinian people's right to exist, she called us hate marchers.
How is that Islamophobic?
Offensive. It is Islamophobic because I'm a Muslim.
Why?
And attacking my right to stand in solidarity with the Palestinians who are also Muslim is Islamophobic, deeply offensive.
But lots of people who, with respect, lots of people who go, I've been on those marches, lots of people who go on those marches aren't Muslim. If you apply, if you say that the march is hate march, how is it Islamophobic against everybody if people on them aren't Islamic?
There are so many examples that skips my mind that I've experienced with Suella Braverman statements after statements, calling all sorts of names. And I could have done that myself, looked up. But here is a simple fact. Suella Braverman has lived on the edge, so much so that she had to resign. She was actually asked to resign from a position. And this is not the first time she has done it twice. There must be a reason why this lady isn't really popular. She does say the things that she wants to say, I understand, and she has the right to say them. She creates a lot of heat, but very little light. I'd like to listen to MPs and parliamentarians who give light rather than heat, because they are public representatives after all. And Nigel Farage, look, he has been directly on to myself Islamophobic on live shows. Recently, when I came to one of his shows, he actually shut down the conversation halfway through the conversation, saying, I'm not having any of that. And this is the very same man
That's not Islamophobic.
We should be supporting.
It's not Islamophobic to say I'm not having any of that. Explain.
He has asked me that he did not give me the same honor to speak my mind in his show. Now he's asking, or you are trying to champion his right to free speech. I would stand with him to say he has the right to speak, but we have got to do it both ways. Nigel Farage needs to also allow people who he disagrees with the same right that he's asking for. I have the right to speak, even if I disagree with him. I'm not saying he should not be speaking. I'm saying he has every right to speak. When we speak, we are accountable for it. Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman have just not been consistent. That inconsistency is what I'm talking about.
OK, Ajmal, talking about the peaceful protest you talk about around the Palestine issue, what about when the mob went outside Parliament and over 1,000 tried to get their way inside? In fact, the scenes were so unruly outside, people were terrified of how they were voting inside. Would you like to take some accountability for that?
I wasn't party to that, number one. Number two, I've seen 7 or 8 marches or more take place in the streets of London. Probably more than a few million collectively have attended. if all of those marches were put together, I would say the number of disturbances, arrests, those that have been witnessed have been dealt with by the police adequately. If somebody breaks the law, they should be put behind bars and tried. And I'd support the police in their investigation. And I'll be with you in calling that these people should not be allowed to come back to a march. But by far, 95% of those marches have been very peaceful. And I'd say those marches are the ones that I celebrate. Those are the marches that actually give you and I such a proud feeling of being British, because we are so open-minded. We have the free speech. It's not like Iran, by the way, where you can't speak. It's not like Saudi Arabia, where you can't speak. In Britain, we don't want Suella Braverman's version of freedom. We don't want Nigel Farage's version of freedom. That's my point. My point is we celebrate our freedom.
I'm afraid many people do, because many people have voted for them. I appreciate your passion, Ajmal Majrour, and thank you very much for joining us on GB News and being so forthright. See, this is all about having a reasoned opinion, a good debate with those you perhaps may disagree with. That's the point of GB News. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, including Britain's strictest head teacher claims victory after her prayer ban is upheld by a judge. Her school rules were being challenged by a Muslim pupil. Is this a win for common sense? But first, let's get straight into your latest news headlines, and it's Polly Middlehurst.
The top stories this hour. Downing Street says the attempt by police in Brussels to shut down the National Conservatism Conference is extremely disturbing. Officers arrived while GB News presenter Nigel Farage was addressing the event, giving everyone 15 minutes to leave the venue. It's understood the order came from the local mayor of Brussels, Emir Keir, in a move he said was to guarantee public safety. Organisers say the event is continuing for as long as it can, but delegates have been encouraged not to leave because police won't be letting them back in. Also in the news today, the Rwanda bill is back in the House of Lords tonight after MPs rejected a series of amendments they'd suggested, with some Conservatives calling the proposals ridiculous. However, the Lords are maintaining their standoff with the government on its flagship policy. They're demanding Rishi Sunak's deportation plan ensures due regard for human rights and modern slavery concerns. Downing Street's hoping to clear the final hurdle this week and get flights off the ground within weeks, but Labour's still insisting the scheme is doomed to fail. And as you've been hearing, a High Court ruling dismissing a Muslim student's challenge against her school's prayer ban has been described as a victory for all schools. The student argued the policy at the Michaela Community School in North London was discriminatory and breached her right to religious freedom. However, the head teacher there, Catherine Bubble-Singh, said schools should not be forced to change their approach simply because a child or parent saw something they didn't like. The judge upheld the school's position, highlighting safety concerns. Let's just bring you some breaking news we're getting concerning arrivals and departures at Birmingham Airport. They've been halted after reports of a suspicious device, we understand, on an Aer Lingus flight into Dublin. This developing story ongoing, so of course new details coming to us all the time. We'll get more on that as it comes to us. And your last headline for this half hour, social media platform X is planning to start charging all new users a small fee to interact with posts. The site's owner, Elon Musk, says charging new users to like and reply to tweets is the only way to stop what he described as the relentless onslaught of bots and fake accounts. Last year, a pilot scheme was launched in New Zealand and the Philippines, which charged a $1 a year subscription. It's reported the trial will now be rolled out more widely across the globe. Those are your headlines. For the latest stories, do sign up to GB News Alert. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For a valuable legacy your family can own, gold coins will always shine bright. Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Let's check on the numbers for you. The pound buying you $1.2429 and €1.1695 euros. The price of gold is £1,923 and 7 pence an ounce. And the FTSE 100 is closed for the day today at 7,820 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Polly. And as you just heard there, we have some breaking news now. We are hearing that flights have been suspended at Birmingham Airport after a suspicious package was found on a plane there. Let's learn more about that story now. I'm joined by GB News' Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, what can you tell us?
Well, this was an Aer Lingus flight, EL 3647, that was flying from Birmingham International Airport to Belfast this afternoon when apparently a suspicious item was discovered on board this aircraft. The aircraft was then turned around and landed back at Birmingham Airport. The airport now is sealed off and all emergency services have responded, as is custom and practice. They rehearse for these kind of events on a regular basis. So all of the emergency services, both from the airport, because of course you have the airport fire service, police who are based locally, ambulances as well, and then additionally the wider West Midlands ambulance service, fire service and police called to the scene as well to assist. I should say that we have had a statement from the Birmingham International Airport which says that Birmingham has temporarily suspended operations due to a security incident on an aircraft. They said the aircraft landed safely and all passengers and crew have disembarked. All customers due to travel should make their way to the airport and check in as normal. We don't know, of course, how long the airport is going to be closed. Clearly, Birmingham Airport are working on the scenario. They hope that at some point in the hours ahead, they will be able to open up that airport again to these passengers. But of course, what you always then get is a build-up, a bottleneck of both passengers and flights that were supposed to take off, that will take off late, and then flights that have been stacking up, waiting to land, that will probably be diverted to other airports, and that causes all kinds of problems in terms of scheduling of flights and inconvenience to passengers. But for the moment, it is a security incident, a suspicious package found on an aircraft, an Aer Lingus flight that was bound for Belfast. That aircraft has returned to Birmingham and all emergency services are at the scene after the aircraft landed safely on the scene.
Thank you, Mark White, for that update on the incident at Birmingham Airport. Now, plenty more to bring you in our action-packed final furlong. Don't go anywhere.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, my name is Johnny Ratner with your very latest on the M60 in Greater Manchester. There are clockwise queues of at least half an hour from junction 8 to 9 between the Carrington and Trafford Park exits. 2 lanes on that 4-lane stretch are out of action past the scene of an accident. In Nottinghamshire, the A614 is closed on the stretch between Ollerton and Thoresby. Police are dealing with a collision that happened around 2:30. The Lincoln bypass, the A46, that remains closed between the Donington and Skellingford roundabouts after a van and a car collided. Recovery work is underway with long queues on the approach back towards the A57. And in Devon, the A380 is closed southbound from Sandygate down to King's Tainton for accident investigation work. And C2C trains are suspended via Upminster eastbound between Barking and Pitsea and Grays. And for now, that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Tubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations? Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where. We need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. They could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is, what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and...
Irritating? It'd be disastrous. It would destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primus stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles.
Absolutely.
They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead at, actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country.
A Muslim student's challenge at the High Court against a London school's ban on prayer rituals has been rejected. The student argued that the ban at Michaela Community School in London was discriminatory and unlawfully breached her right to religious freedom. However, the school said allowing prayers risks security threats and could undermine social cohesion among pupils. Well, joining me now in the studio is Abdullah Al-Andalusi, co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative. Thank you for joining us in the studio. So Catherine Burblesing called this a victory for all schools. Presumably you disagree?
Yes, I think it's unfortunate. I mean, why is prayer deemed to be a threat in society today? There's always a lot of complaints, especially on GB News, about Christianity and Christian practices being restricted in secular Britain. And yet, when it comes to other religions, we celebrate, unfortunately, these bans and students being prevented from simply praying in their lunch breaks when they would be presumably playing games. They would just want to choose to pray instead, and that's going to be banned, unfortunately.
Except it wasn't about that. It wasn't about a specific religion. It was about, it set out in the charter and the rules of the school that no prayer was allowed at all. And that was made clear to all parents, all pupils, before they enrolled at this school. In fact, she said in the ruling, you don't have to come to this school, but these are my rules. I'm free to make my own rules. If you don't like them, you can go elsewhere.
Well, actually, she said she used to allow people to pray in the yard voluntarily. And then she complained that it was making other Muslim students more religious, or that there was some pressure on Muslims who didn't want to be religious or what have you. And then she just said, you know what, I'm going to just ban Muslim prayer altogether. Because apparently culture and social cohesion is so fragile that prayer, just simply prayer, is a threat to it. If such a culture is so fragile that prayer is a threat, we need to re-examine that culture.
Well, maybe we need to re-examine the culture that emerged from this, a backdrop of events including violence, intimidation and appalling racial harassment of our teachers. That's the backdrop, the consequence of this decision. Surely that proves that introducing prayers, special treatment for whatever groups within a school, when it leads to this kind of intimidation, it proves the point. There should be no special dispensation for Muslim prayers in British schools. The High Court agreed.
Well, such things are actually deplorable, but they were coming from outside the school, not from inside the school. So it seems like Catherine just buckled to outside pressure and decided just to ban everything. I mean, is this the kind of social cohesion we have? Like, are we going to imitate China, which prevents and bans all kinds of demonstration of religiosity in their schools in the sake of a monoculture? Because anything else than a government-approved monoculture creates division and destroys social cohesion. We're not living in China. If she wants to create, what next? Is she going to mandate unisex toilets and calling everybody they and not he or she? Because this creates division too. Are we going to go down the Marxist route then, it seems?
Well, she wanted actual universality and not preferential treatment. That's what this is about. But thanks for joining us in the studio. Appreciate your time. Abdullah Al-Andalusi, thank you very much for joining us on that debate. And up next, we'll be discussing GB News' favourite, Meghan Markle, who's got a new job, making jam. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office. It's a bright day out there, some sunny spells even, but it's still blustery. There are still showers coming through. High pressure tantalisingly close, but we're going to have to wait a few more days for that to arrive. For the time being, we've got low pressure to the north and to the east, bringing this cool northerly airflow and bringing further showers in the airflow. Now, the showers overnight become more confined to the north of Scotland, where they'll be frequent and prolonged. Eastern England as well, and a few toppling into Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and Western England. In between, plenty of clear spells, and with lighter winds, it's going to be a bit chillier as we begin Wednesday. Certainly a fresh start out there, but a bright start. Some long spells of sunshine for Western Scotland, Southern Scotland, parts of England and Wales as well. Now, we're going to see further showers coming to the north and east of Scotland, as well as parts of eastern England. There'll be fewer, I think, compared with Tuesday. And we're going to see the cloud thicken for Northern Ireland with outbreaks of rain. Feeling quite cool here, 7 Celsius. Otherwise, where we do get lengthy, clear and drier weather across central parts, 12 or 13 Celsius. So a cool day, but feeling pleasant where we've got the dry and bright weather. And a bright start to Thursday. Again, a chilly start to the day for many, but we're going to see cloud and rain spread into northern parts of the country. That will spread south during Friday, clearing to sunny skies at the weekend.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 5:50. This is the final furlong of the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. Now, from Netflix specials to her Archetypes podcast, the Duchess of Sussex has tried her hand at many, many things, but now she's spending her time making her own strawberry jam to friends and influencers as she launches the first product of her new brand, American Riviera Orchards. Well, will this venture stick? Well, join me now in the studio. I'm delighted to say it's the former royal correspondent, the all-round legend, Michael Cole. Michael, until last week, Meghan was an avowed feminist, smashing traditional gender models. Now she's making jam.
Well, maybe there's hope yet, you know. Jam and Jerusalem, the Women's Institute. The Queen was a member throughout most of her adult life. So maybe there is a way back into the hearts of the British people via strawberry jam. Nothing wrong with that. But, of course, what this is a launch of her new lifestyle, food and furnishings sequence for Netflix. Netflix have given a $100 million contract to the Sussexes, and now the Sussexes are going to have to start singing for their supper because they want payback. Netflix want payback. They don't give away all that money for nothing. So the Prince, Harry, Duke of Sussex, is going to do this polo series, and she's going to do this lifestyle. But it won't be shot at their house, on their hilltop Camelot in Montecito. It will be shot at a very nice house nearby, not their own. So we can presume that their rescue chickens won't be having a walk-on part in the series. And really what it is, it's a development of the podcast she had before she was engaged, which was called The Tab. Now, that was nothing to do with a Cambridge University magazine called The Tab. That was to do with a special sort of Spanish wine that she liked called Taba something or other. So she called it The Tab. But she closed that down for the very simple reason that when she joined, or half joined, the British royal family, there's one big no-no at Buckingham Palace. You do not exploit your royal status for commercial gain or allow others to do so. But now they are in the marketplace. They have to earn their living, and one of the ways they're earning their living is selling themselves. That is their unique selling point, the fact that they have royal status. And they're going to have to work at it very hard because they have a very expensive lifestyle. Security alone must cost a fortune. 3 shifts a day of burly men guarding the perimeter of their house. Now, that burns through a lot of money.
Gwyneth Paltrow made her living selling dubiously scented candles. Now, Meghan will be flogging jam. Quickly, do you think it will catch on?
Well, I think it will. People will sign up for it. I hope the jam tastes nice, not too sugary. If it's good, then it will sell, and why not? But it really isn't. It's quite a step down from the pedestal they were once on.
Certainly is, and she's got $100 million. That's a lot of bread, and now she's making a load of jam. What a dubious pun to end the show. Well, that's all from me for now. Of course, Jubes & Co. is next, and don't forget to join us from 6 a.m. tomorrow. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel, followed by Britain's Newsroom at 9:30 with Andrew and Bev. And then all the drama with PMQs live at midday, and that's with Chris Hope. And then, of course, it's Tom and Emily with Good Afternoon Britain from 1 o'clock. That's 1 until 3. And then you've got My Ugly Mush back at 3 p.m. until 6 p.m. I've been Martin Daubney. A dramatic day today. Of course, that clampdown in Brussels kicked off our show. The Mayor sending in the Bother Boys to shut down that national conservatism movement. You sent in hundreds and hundreds of emails about that. I read out a few, didn't have time to do all of them, sadly. And we're about to go into a debate on smoking in the Commons. We'll have all of that throughout the following shows. We're expecting another Tory revolt. Stick around for that. But first, it's time for your weather, and it's Aidan McGibbon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office. It's a bright day out there, some sunny spells even, but it's still blustery. There are still showers coming through. High pressure, tantalisingly close, but we're going to have to wait a few more days for that to arrive. For the time being, we've got low pressure to the north and to the east, bringing this cool northerly airflow and bringing further showers in the airflow. Now, the showers overnight become more confined to the north of Scotland, where they'll be frequent and prolonged. Eastern England as well, and a few toppling into Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and Western England. In between, plenty of clear spells, and with lighter winds, it's going to be a bit chillier as we begin Wednesday. Certainly a fresh start out there, but a bright start. Some long spells of sunshine for Western Scotland, Southern Scotland, parts of England and Wales as well. Now, we're going to see further showers coming to the north and east of Scotland, as well as parts of Eastern England. There'll be fewer, I think, compared with Tuesday. And we're going to see the cloud thicken for Northern Ireland with outbreaks of rain. Feeling quite cool here, 7 Celsius. Otherwise, where we do get lengthy, clear and drier weather across central parts, 12 or 13 Celsius. So a cool day, but feeling pleasant where we've got the dry and bright weather. And a bright start to Thursday. Again, a chilly start to the day for many, but we're going to see cloud and rain spread into northern parts of the country. That will spread south during Friday, clearing to sunny skies at the weekend.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner with the latest. Long queues continue on the clockwise carriageway of the M60 through Greater Manchester from junction 8 to 9 from the Carrington turnoff round to the exit for Trafford Park. All traffic has been funnelled onto the hard shoulder where the main carriageway is closed past the scene of an accident. On the M6 in Cheshire, the left lane's closed southbound about 2 miles south of the Sandbach and Crewe exit junction 17 where a breakdown is being recovered. And in Nottinghamshire, the A614 remains closed along the Blythe Road in Ollerton and Thoresby following an accident accident. The A46 Lincoln bypass still closed in the Doddington and Skellingford roundabouts after a van and a car collided. In Devon, the A380 is shut southbound from Ashcombe down to King's Taton for accident investigation work, and C2C trains are suspended via Upminster eastbound out of Barking to Pitsea and Grays. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest prize so far. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline